That good-for-nothing wife. Just ditch that woman before we get into real trouble. I overheard my husband Brad and his mother say as they thought I was asleep. Their attitudes had completely changed. They left home, but shamelessly returned, claiming they didn't want to lose their assets, and began causing chaos. When I confronted them with the reality of our situation, their true colors showed. My name is Daisy. I'm 30 years old. After dating Brad for 5 years, we got engaged and moved in with his parents. Initially, we agreed to buy our own house when we had our first child. Nearly 2 years have passed without a child, and we're still living with his parents. Living with Brad, his mother, and his younger brother, I often became a subject of concern for those around me. My parents lived far away and couldn't help, but my husband was always kind, and I had a good relationship with my mother-in-law, which made me happy. One day, I had an accident and broke a bone, ending up hospitalized and unable to move on my own. At first, my husband and mother-in-law visited me daily, showing their concern, but soon, their visits dwindled to once a week. Despite being grateful for their visits, my world shattered when I overheard their conversation after the doctor informed me I might have lasting injuries. She can't do housework or anything, but she's going to cost us more than ever. What a useless wife, Brad sneered. With her lingering issues, having kids is even more out of the question. Maybe it's a good thing we don't have kids. If she stays bedridden, I'll have to do all the housework and care for her. I didn't sign up for this, he continued. I didn't either, his mother chimed in. She was supposed to do the housework and caregiving. If she hadn't gotten into that accident, she could have continued as our maid. What a disappointment. Before this becomes too troublesome, get rid of her. I'll divorce her quickly, Brad agreed. Thinking I was asleep, they had this conversation in my hospital room. To them, I was nothing more than a maid and caregiver. Their attitudes became blatantly cold afterward. Your husband hardly comes anymore, does he? He must be searching for a new woman. Only you had a child, you might have kept him, my mother-in-law taunted. As Brad's visits became even less frequent, she seemed to take pleasure in saying nasty things. However, my brother-in-law stepped up. He did the laundry, checked if I needed anything, and was generally very helpful. He visited me nearly every day and even took me outside in my wheelchair, providing a small comfort in an otherwise painful time. When I felt suffocated by my long hospitalization, I was often exhausted from physical therapy and sometimes wanted to give up. But I think I've made it this far thanks to my brother-in-law. His presence was an immense help to me. Although I'm not getting worse and physical therapy is going well, it's still uncertain if there will be any lasting issues. When I told my husband and mother-in-law about this, they started arguing. Seriously? See, I told you we should have gotten rid of her sooner, my mother-in-law scoffed. What are you two even saying? Aren't you being too harsh on Daisy, who's been taking care of our house and our father all this time? My brother-in-law retorted. In reality, I had been caring for my father-in-law for 5 years while dating my husband. When we started dating, Brad's parents suggested, why don't you live together since you're going to get married anyway? It's a great deal. We can save money, live together, and then get married when we're settled, they added. When I hesitated, they reassured me, it's okay. We have plenty of rooms and we won't invade your privacy. Plus, you don't need to pay rent. You want to marry my son, right? How could I refuse? But in return, they had a favor to ask. Daisy, while you're working from home, can you look after our father who needs care? It's only for 4 to 5 hours during the day when I'm out for my part-time job, Brad's mother asked. We also have my brother, so the two of you can work together. My brother-in-law, who also worked from home, and I teamed up to take care of my father-in-law. My father-in-law and brother-in-law were very close. My father-in-law had a hobby of collecting furniture and even had a separate house just for it. My brother-in-law and I always enjoyed hearing about his hobby, and my father-in-law loved his caring son, Reagan. Eventually, my father-in-law's health began to decline, and after years of care, he passed away. After that, my husband proposed to me, saying, "Thank you for always taking care of my father. Let's continue to be together. Let's get married." Despite having worked hard on housework and caregiving, the moment I became immobile, my husband and mother-in-law's attitude changed as if I were worthless. Even I, normally composed, was infuriated. "Force me, please pay what you're supposed to," I demanded. "Well, I don't want any trouble, so I'll give you the house. Let's waive the division of other property," Brad conceded. I wondered if he would really give me the house, but since my father-in-law had left a substantial inheritance, it seemed plausible. The inheritance, divided among my mother-in-law, Brad, and Reagan, amounted to approximately $300,000 each, so Brad seemed to have enough assets. Reagan was tasked with handling all the paperwork with the executor, requiring several trips to the court, which was quite a hassle. "No way, we can't give away the house. If we divide the property, I'll lose half my savings," Brad protested. "It's just a wastefully large house in the countryside. Even if we give it away, it's not an issue. At the highest estimate, it's only worth about $100,000, and various fees will be deducted when we sell it. It's cheaper than losing half my savings," Reagan reasoned. "Well, if you say so, Brad, but what if she demands more later? What if rumors spread in the neighborhood because we abandoned her?" My mother-in-law worried. As they debated what to do with me, Reagan interrupted, "Then I'll take her in." "Why would you go out of your way to do that?" Brad asked suspiciously. "You've been interested in Daisy, haven't you? That's why you're so willing. You can have her if you want, but she's no longer of any use to us. Don't ask to take Daisy and the house back later, okay?" My mother-in-law sneered. "Why would I? I just hope you won't come asking for money later. And remember, you can't return damaged goods," Reagan replied sharply. Brad and Reagan signed the papers and arranged to formally change the property title through a lawyer. "I'll take out some money from my savings, so why don't you find a younger, healthier, and prettier woman to marry and build a better house?" Reagan suggested. "Sounds good," Brad agreed. Then he turned to me. "Hey Daisy, get a lawyer to file for our divorce quickly." They said they'd stay in a hotel for a while and left the room. Reagan and I silently saw them off. I had to find a lawyer to file for our divorce first. With Reagan's help, I filed for the divorce, and in a few days, Brad and I became complete strangers. A week later, Brad and my mother-in-law packed their belongings and left the house. It was strange that Reagan, Brad's brother, continued to visit me. "Now that I've divorced your brother, there's no need for you to worry about your former sister-in-law," I told him. He responded, "I'm doing this because I wanted to let you know that I didn't get along with you just because you were my brother's wife. We both provided care and did housework together. We've talked a lot more in these 7 years than you ever did with my brother. We're friends, aren't we?" Reagan said with a gentle smile. All I could do was express my thanks and gratitude. A month later, I was discharged from the hospital. Although I had to visit for physical therapy, I felt relieved to be home after such a long time. "Do you think those two will ever come back? I'm worried they might return and make me work again," I confided. "If they come back, I'll drive them away. I can't forgive them for treating you so horribly. Plus, they have no right to return to this house," Reagan reassured me. I was still unable to move as before, so Reagan took care of most of the household chores. Fortunately, as I had been working from home as a freelancer, I was able to return to work and contribute financially. Thanks to the bi-weekly physical therapy, I recovered smoothly without any complications. A year later, I was able to live as before, and Reagan and I collaborated on the housework. We spent more time together, syncing our days off to go on trips. Just when I thought our peaceful days would continue, a storm suddenly came. One night, while Reagan and I were eating dinner, there was a knock on the door and the intercom rang repeatedly. Nervously, I answered, and the person on the monitor was Brad. "Hey, open up," he demanded, thinking this noise might disturb the neighbors. I opened the front door, and Brad entered the house without hesitation. "What do you want?" I asked, irritated by his sudden appearance. "Why do I have to put up with such an attitude just for coming home? This isn't your home anymore. State your business and leave quickly," I demanded. "What are you talking about? I'll be living here again from today." "Oh, I'm hungry. Hey Daisy, give me some food," Brad demanded, expecting me to serve him. "Hey, cut it out. Why are you here?" I asked, growing increasingly frustrated. "Well, I've spent almost all my money, and my mom will be here soon too, so leave the door unlocked," he said casually. As I remained silent, he remarked, "Oh, you're all healed up, huh? That's great. Let's get back together. You must have had a hard time without me." His audacity made me feel sick. "Stop it. I divorced you. I don't care about you anymore," I snapped. "Don't get cocky. You've been living on my money all this time, and you can't do anything but housework. Just shut up and do as I say," Brad shouted, his voice dripping with entitlement. Just then, the door opened, and his mother arrived. "You left the door unlocked." That's careless. Oh, what's going on? She asked, noticing the tension. She's been getting cheeky, so I was giving her a bit of education. She's grown thick-skinned in the year we've been away, Brad explained casually, as if it were a normal occurrence. Once again, Brad and his mother began to make themselves at home as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Enough is enough. This isn't your home. I'm calling the police, I declared, fed up with their intrusion. Oh yeah, about that. This house was originally in your father's name, right? So that means that the heir, including my mother, makes our agreement null and void, doesn't it? Brad shouted, making an unreasonable claim. You promised to give me the house. If you're nullifying that, then everything about the division of property should be nullified as well. Give me half the savings, he demanded. Sure, but I don't have it anymore. Didn't I tell you earlier? I've squandered it all. I quit my job, spent it all on booze, fun, investments, you name it. I also have some debts with consumer finance, about $20,000, Brad confessed, shocking me with his recklessness. I guess, can you pay for me? Brad asked, catching me off guard. Initially, I thought he was lying, but his mother confirmed it. I can't lend you that much money, I replied, taken aback. I'm not asking you to lend it. I'm telling you to pay it, Brad demanded. I'm not giving you any money. I'm calling the police, I declared, feeling the surge of anger. As Reagan dialed the police to report the situation, Brad's demeanor shifted. You've become quite daring in the past year. You're just showing off because Daisy's here, he sneered. Brad began to wreak havoc in the house, breaking precious furniture that had been my father-in-law's keepsake. His mother joined in, destroying furniture and laughing as she did so. It's my father's and aunt's, I pleaded, horrified by their rampage. About 10 minutes later, when the police arrived, I explained the situation to them. This is quite a mess. Let's hear your side of the story, the officer said. What's wrong with me breaking things in my own house? Brad retorted. That's right, we're just crushing things we don't need. What's the problem? His mother added. When the police seemed unsure how to respond, Reagan stepped in. This house has never belonged to these two. It's under Daisy's name. Huh? What kind of nonsense are you talking about? Brad exclaimed. Actually, before he passed away, our father-in-law left a will through a lawyer. Of course, you wouldn't know. You handed over what you were told and left the rest to Reagan. So this house was yours from the beginning, Reagan explained. As the truth sunk in, Brad and his mother stood dumbfounded. So, this isn't your property then, the officer clarified. Oh, hold on, but I'm her ex-husband. We're like family, so she'll forgive me, right? Brad attempted to reason. Don't make me laugh. You're a stranger once you're an ex. I don't even know that you were in contact with another woman before our divorce was finalized and who treated me like a maid if not you, I countered firmly. No, that's not what happened. I was just going along with what my mom said. She ordered me to do all this, Brad. What are you saying? Your failed business, your failed relationships with young girls, your gambling debts, aren't these all you're doing? His mother confessed, exposing his deceit. According to his mother, Brad had been trying to marry a young woman after our divorce, a revelation that left me stunned. He also quit his job to start his own business, but it failed in just a month. Even with money, Brad was rejected by the unemployed man and became reckless, going around playing and gambling, saying that he had money and could afford it. He had said that he had almost no money left, and it seemed that it was indeed nearly zero. You brought this upon yourself. All this is Brad's fault, so at least forgive me. They both desperately pleaded, trying to shift the blame and groveling. This was truly ridiculous. No, I won't forgive either of you. And this isn't something from the past, is it? You were treating me like a servant until a moment ago, right? I retorted firmly. Not leaving when I asked you to leave is illegal. And since the furniture collected by my late father-in-law is now mine, you'll need to compensate me for that, I demanded. But all right, we will compensate you. Just please don't get the police involved. You wouldn't want me to go to jail, would you? Brad pleaded desperately. I actually don't care at all. By the way, we're married, I revealed, shocking them both. It turned out I was married to my former brother-in-law, Reagan. He was now my husband. It hasn't even been a year, and you've moved on to another man, my own brother at that. Brad exclaimed in disbelief. What are you talking about? You moved on before you were even divorced, didn't you? You wouldn't return Daisy to me, no matter how many times I asked. Stop clinging to the past already, Reagan countered, leaving Brad speechless. I don't care anymore. I'll pay for whatever damages there are. How much for my idiot husband's junk? Reagan asked, taking charge of the situation. Well, if we calculate roughly about $100,000, I replied. Huh? What? Brad and his mother were shocked. The furniture that my father-in-law had collected was all high-end pieces made by famous designers. Brad and his mother, who had no interest in these items, seemed to have believed they were just junk, I explained. You're going to compensate for what you've broken, right? We're not sure if we can get the same items, but make sure to pay properly, Reagan asserted. Unable to afford such compensation, Brad and his mother were distraught. For the time being, the police took them away for trespassing and vandalism. Of course, I didn't forgive them and went ahead with the lawsuit. Afterwards, Brad and his mother, who were desperately seeking help from Reagan, were bluntly rejected, with him saying, I'm ashamed to even be related by blood. Brad and his mother were likely receiving their just desserts together. And there's one more thing I kept secret. My father-in-law told me to sell the house and use the money as I wish. Reagan had told me that the price of the house was $100,000, but in reality, the document stated the value of the house around $500,000. It's a good location, so it might sell for a bit more. But for now, Reagan and I decided to take it easy in the house. My father-in-law left us with no plans to sell it. Eventually, we plan to sell the land and build a new house. I had some worries about having children, so after getting married to Reagan, I went to the gynecologist for a checkup. But there were no issues with either Reagan or me. Now, with the troublemakers gone, Reagan and I are living happily together.
I never thought a simple photo would turn my life upside down, but that's exactly what happened last Tuesday. There I was, standing next to Mr. Peterson, our company director, both of us smiling as he shook my hand. The caption read, "Finally got that promotion. Hard work pays off. Career milestone." I didn't think much about posting it, just another career update on social media. How wrong I was. My name is Audrey, and at 25, I'd finally gotten my first big break at Marshall & Associates, moving up from entry-level manager to department head. It wasn't an easy journey, 3 years of overtime, countless presentations, and more coffee than I care to admit. But I did it on my own, and that meant everything to me. I was still riding the high of my promotion when my phone buzzed. The number wasn't saved in my contacts, but I recognized it instantly. My mother. 7 years of silence, and now, out of the blue, she was calling me. My hand trembled as I stared at the screen. Hello? My voice came out smaller than I intended. Audrey, sweetheart. My mother's voice was exactly as I remembered it, that sickly sweet tone she used when she wanted something. Your father and I just saw your post. We're so proud of you. Proud. The word hit me like a slap. Where was that pride when I needed it most? Thanks, I managed to say, gripping my desk to steady myself. We should celebrate. Why don't you come over this weekend? We can discuss throwing a proper party for you. The whole family would love to see how successful you've become. The whole family, including Sarah, my younger sister. The golden child, the favorite. The one who could do no wrong. I'll think about it, I said, my throat tight. Please do, darling. We've missed you so much. It's time to put the past behind us, don't you think? After we hung up, I sat at my desk, staring at nothing. 7 years of silence, broken because of a social media post. 7 years since I'd walked out of that house, vowing never to return. 7 years of building a life without them. My hand brushed against the medical alert bracelet on my wrist, the one that warned about my peanut allergy. The same allergy that my parents had treated as an inconvenience, and Sarah had used as ammunition for her cruel jokes. My grandmother's words echoed in my mind, family is who treats you like family, not just who shares your blood. She'd been my real parent these past 7 years, supporting me through college, believing in me when no one else did. The words, "we're proud of you," kept echoing in my head. Funny how those words could feel so hollow coming from one person and so genuine from another. I looked at the photo on my desk, me and Grandma at my college graduation. She was beaming with real pride that day, not the manufactured kind my parents were suddenly showing. The phone call from Mom had ripped open old wounds, and now the past came rushing back like a flood. Sarah was 3 years younger than me, but from the moment she was born, she became the center of our family's universe. While I got practical clothes from discount stores, Sarah had designer outfits. My parents would document her every move with expensive cameras, while my school achievements gathered dust in drawers. I remember my 10th birthday clearly. I'd been hoping for the art set I'd been eyeing for months, nothing fancy, just a basic kit with colored pencils and a sketchbook. Instead, I got a pack of number 2 pencils, because they're what you need for school anyway. That same year, for Sarah's 7th birthday, our parents transformed the entire backyard into a Disney Princess Wonderland, complete with a hired Cinderella. Sarah's just more artistic, Mom would say when relatives questioned the disparity. She needs proper tools to develop her talent. You have to understand, my Aunt Jessica once said to my parents during a family dinner, children should be loved equally. This isn't right. I can still see Mom's dismissive wave. Oh, Jessica, you don't have children. You don't understand. Our girls are just different. Sarah has real potential. The worst part wasn't even the material things, it was the constant emotional undermining. Like the time I won first place in the state math competition. Instead of congratulations, Mom said, "That's nice, dear, but did you see Sarah's painting got displayed in the school hallway?" My grandmother saw through it all. "This isn't right, Margaret," she'd tell my mother. "You're raising one child to be entitled and the other to feel worthless." "Mom, please," my mother would respond with an eye roll. "Sarah is gifted. Audrey is, well, Audrey is ordinary. We're just being realistic about their capabilities." Sarah learned quickly how to exploit her position. She'd break something and blame me, knowing our parents would believe her without question. She'd accidentally spill juice on my homework, then cry when I got upset, making me look like the bad guy. Once, she even told her friends they couldn't play with me because I was the boring sister. The day I got accepted into the advanced mathematics program at school, Sarah had a minor role in a school play. Guess which event my parents attended? I sat alone in the math classroom during the awards ceremony, watching other parents beam with pride at their children. My certificate was signed by my teacher and the principal, but my parents never even saw it. "Your sister needs us more," Dad would say whenever I tried to express my feelings. "She has real talents to nurture. You're more independent." Independent wasn't a compliment, it was their way of justifying their negligence. Even our relatives could see it. During family gatherings, conversations would halt when Sarah would dramatically demand attention or deliberately exclude me from activities. The adults would exchange uncomfortable glances, but my parents remained oblivious, or perhaps willfully blind. Life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Mine came in the form of a peanut butter sandwich at Grandma's house when I was 12. I'd eaten peanut butter countless times before, it was actually one of my favorite foods. But that day was different. "Want a sandwich, sweetheart?" Grandma had asked, making her famous peanut butter and honey combination. I nodded eagerly, watching her spread the creamy peanut butter across the bread. 3 bites in, something felt wrong. My throat started to tighten, and breathing became increasingly difficult. I remember dropping the sandwich, my hands clutching at my throat. What happened next is still a blur in my memory. Grandma's quick thinking saved my life. She immediately recognized the signs of anaphylaxis and called 911. I remember her holding my hand in the ambulance, her voice steady but scared. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Just keep breathing." My parents arrived at the hospital about an hour later, clearly annoyed at having to leave work. Mom was tapping her foot impatiently while the doctor explained about severe peanut allergies and how they can develop suddenly, even if you've never had problems before. "She'll need to carry an EpiPen at all times," the doctor emphasized. "And you'll need to be very careful about checking ingredients in everything she eats. Cross-contamination can be dangerous too." Dad nodded absently, checking his watch. Mom was already on her phone, probably texting Sarah's dance instructor about being late for pickup. The ride home was worse than the hospital. They waited until we were in the car before letting their true feelings show. "This is just perfect," Mom muttered. "As if we don't have enough to deal with. First the math tutoring, now this," Dad added. "Everything with you has to be complicated, doesn't it, Audrey?" I pressed myself against the car door, trying to make myself as small as possible. My throat was still sore from the reaction, but their words hurt more than any physical pain. The years that followed were a careful dance of reading labels and carrying EpiPens. Grandma made sure I had proper medical alert bracelets and helped me learn how to advocate for myself. She even called the school to make sure they understood the severity of my condition. Sarah, of course, found endless amusement in my new medical condition. She'd wave peanut butter sandwiches in my face, laughing when I flinched away. "Oh, sorry," she'd say with fake innocence. "I forgot you're allergic to everything now." At family gatherings, she'd loudly announce, "Be careful everyone, Audrey might die if she eats the wrong thing," making me feel like even more of an outsider. My parents never corrected her behavior. If anything, they seemed annoyed by my need for caution. I learned to pack my own meals, check every label 3 times, and never trust food I hadn't personally verified. It was exhausting, but it became my normal. My high school graduation should have been a moment of triumph. Full scholarship to Northwestern State University, I'd done it entirely on my own, maintaining straight A's while juggling part-time jobs and my constant vigilance about food allergies. The acceptance letter felt like validation for all those nights I'd spent studying while Sarah's music blasted through the walls from her bedroom. The family dinner where I announced my college acceptance is forever etched in my memory. "I got into Northwestern," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Full academic scholarship." "That's nice, dear," Mom said, barely looking up from her plate. "The thing is," I continued, gripping my fork tightly, "I'll need help with housing. The scholarship covers tuition, but not accommodation. I've looked into the costs, and..." "No," Dad's response was immediate and flat. "You chose to apply to a college in another state. That was your decision. We're saving for Sarah's education. She's planning to attend Juilliard in 2 years, and that's not cheap." I stared at my plate, fighting back tears. Sarah smirked from across the table, twirling her pasta with deliberate slowness. "But it's just the housing cost," I tried again. "The scholarship covers everything else." "Audrey," Mom's voice was sharp. "We've made our decision. If you want to go to college out of state, you'll have to figure out the housing situation yourself." That's when the front door opened, and Grandma walked in, holding a congratulations balloon and a small gift bag. Her smile faded as she took in the scene, my red eyes, Sarah's smug expression, our parents' cold faces. "What's going on?" she asked, looking around the table. Sarah giggled, always eager to twist the knife. "Oh, Audrey got into college, but she'll be living on the street because Mom and Dad won't pay for her housing. They're saving their money for my Juilliard education instead." The silence that followed was deafening. "Is this true?" Grandma's voice was quiet but sharp. When no one answered, she continued, "Margaret, Richard, how dare you? Your daughter earned a full scholarship, and you won't even help her with housing?" "Mom, please," my mother sighed. "Sarah's education." "Sarah's education?" Grandma's voice rose. "What about Audrey's education? What about supporting both your children? And you," she turned to Sarah, who was still wearing that satisfied smirk, "you're becoming a cruel, spoiled child. I'm ashamed of how you're behaving." Sarah's face crumpled, and she burst into tears, her usual tactic when things didn't go her way. Mom and Dad immediately rushed to comfort her, shooting angry glares at Grandma and me. "This is exactly what we mean," Mom snapped. "Audrey and you, Mom, you're always causing problems. Always making everything difficult." Something inside me snapped. Without a word, I stood up and walked out of the dining room. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, pulled out my old duffel bag, and started throwing in clothes. Grandma appeared in the doorway a few minutes later. "Pack everything you need, sweetheart. You're coming home with me." "But college," I started. "Will be taken care of," she said firmly. "I'll pay for your housing. You focus on your studies and building your future." 20 minutes later, we walked out of that house together, leaving behind my parents' angry voices and Sarah's theatrical sobs. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. College life was everything I'd hoped for and more. My tiny apartment near campus became my sanctuary, a place where I could finally breathe freely without walking on eggshells. Grandma visited often. She never missed a birthday, a holiday, or any milestone in my life. My parents and Sarah, on the other hand, became ghosts. No calls on Christmas, no cards on my birthday, not even a text message during graduation. 7 years of complete silence. So when I found myself standing on their doorstep after that phone call about my promotion, it felt surreal. The house hadn't changed: same cream-colored walls, same manicured lawn, same brass knocker that I used to have to stretch to reach. Mom opened the door with an enthusiastic "Audrey" that seemed rehearsed. She pulled me into a hug that felt foreign and stiff. The living room was exactly as I remembered it, still dominated by Sarah's achievements. Her Juilliard degree held the place of honor above the fireplace. She sat in Dad's old armchair, scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging my presence except to roll her eyes when Mom gushed about my promotion. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," Mom kept saying, the words sounding hollow after 7 years of silence. "Aren't we, Richard?" Dad nodded from his spot on the couch. "Very proud. Making your way up in a big company like that. We should celebrate properly," Mom continued, her voice taking on that familiar planning tone I remembered from all of Sarah's parties. "A big family gathering, right here at home. Everyone would love to see you, Aunt Jessica, all your cousins." "Grandmother too?" I asked pointedly. Of course, Mom said quickly, though I caught her slight grimace. "We want to make things right, Audrey. It's been too long. Let's say, 2 weeks from now? Give everyone time to make arrangements?" I found myself nodding, though every instinct screamed this was wrong. "Sure, that sounds nice." The 2 weeks leading up to the party were strange. Work kept me busy with my new responsibilities, but my phone buzzed constantly with messages from my suddenly attentive family. Mom sent daily texts about party preparations. Sarah, who hadn't acknowledged my existence for 7 years, suddenly sent me a friend request on social media with a message that read, "Time to put the past behind us, sis." Grandma was ecstatic about the reconciliation. "This is all I've ever wanted," she told me over our weekly dinner. "For my family to be whole again." The day of the party arrived warm and sunny. I pulled up to my parents' house to find cars already lining the street. Inside, the house buzzed with activity. Aunt Jessica's daughter, Emma, darted around with her phone, recording everything like a tiny documentary filmmaker. The smell of catering filled the air, all nut-free, I noticed with surprise. "Audrey," Grandma enveloped me in a warm hug. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Aunt Jessica hugged me next. "So proud of you, kiddo. Department head at your age, that's incredible." Sarah stood by the stairs in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, greeting guests with her practiced pageant smile. Our parents fluttered around, playing the perfect hosts, as if the last 7 years had never happened. When everyone was seated at the elaborately decorated dining table, Mom clinked her glass for attention. "We're so happy to have everyone here today," she began, smiling broadly. "As you know, we're celebrating Audrey's promotion." She paused for polite applause. "It's wonderful to see her finally finding her footing in the corporate world." I should have known the word "finally" was a warning sign. "And speaking of success," Mom continued, her voice brightening, "I'd like to take a moment to talk about our Sarah. Many of you know she graduated from Juilliard with honors last year. She's such a talented artist, truly gifted." The next 5 minutes were a detailed recap of Sarah's achievements, ending with, And now that Audrey has this wonderful position and the ear of management, we're hoping she'll help her incredibly qualified sister join this prestigious company." The table fell silent. I could feel Grandma's eyes on me, see Aunt Jessica's uncomfortable shift in her chair. Emma kept her phone trained on the scene, capturing every excruciating moment. "Actually," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I'm not in a position to hire anyone. I'm a department head, not a director. I don't make hiring decisions." Mom's smile tightened. "But surely with your new influence." "Excuse me," I cut her off, standing up. "Mom, Dad, can we talk privately?" They followed me into the kitchen, their practiced smiles dropping as soon as we were alone. "I thought this was supposed to be a celebration of my promotion," I said quietly. "Not a networking event for Sarah." "Don't be selfish, Audrey," Mom snapped. "Sarah needs this opportunity. Family helps family." "Selfish?" I repeated in disbelief. "After 7 years of no contact, you reach out only because you want something from me, and I'm the selfish one?" Dad's face hardened. "We've given Sarah every advantage, invested everything in her future. The least you could do is help your sister now that you're in a position to do so." We returned to the dining room, the tension following us like a storm cloud. I sat down, trying to ignore the concerned glances from Grandma and Aunt Jessica. The catering staff had served the main course while we were gone, some kind of elegant chicken dish with a creamy sauce. I took a few bites, my mind still churning from the conversation in the kitchen. The sauce had an interesting flavor, nutty, almost. My throat suddenly felt tight. A familiar panic gripped me as I realized what was happening. "Peanuts," I managed to gasp, my hand already fumbling for my purse and the EpiPen inside. "There's peanuts." The room began to spin. I could hear chairs scraping, voices raising in alarm. Grandma's voice cut through the chaos, "Someone call 911." Everything after that became a blur of sounds and shadows. The last thing I remember was the feeling of my throat closing and Grandma's hands gripping mine. I woke up to the steady beep of hospital monitors. My throat felt raw, my body heavy. Grandma sat beside my bed, her face drawn with worry and exhaustion. "Oh, thank God," she whispered when she saw my eyes open. "We almost lost you, sweetheart. The doctors said it was one of the worst anaphylactic reactions they've seen." I tried to speak, but my throat was too sore. "Don't try to talk yet," Grandma said, squeezing my hand. "You've been out for several hours. The EpiPen and the paramedics barely got to you in time." I managed to rasp out, "How? The food, they knew." Before Grandma could answer, Aunt Jessica burst into the room with Emma close behind. Emma clutched her phone, her young face uncharacteristically serious. "Audrey," Aunt Jessica's voice shook with anger. "There's something you need to see." "Emma, show her." Emma stepped forward, her hands trembling as she held out her phone. "I was recording everything at the party," she said quietly. "I got this when you were in the kitchen with your parents." The video showed the dining room from an angle near the dessert table. I could see myself leaving for the kitchen with my parents. Then, clear as day, Sarah stood up and walked to my place setting. She reached into her designer purse, pulled out a small jar, and quickly stirred something into my food. The smirk on her face was unmistakable. "That's peanut butter," Aunt Jessica said, her voice hard. "Your sister deliberately put peanut butter in your food, knowing full well about your allergy." I stared at the phone screen, watching the scene play out again. Sarah, my own sister, had tried to. "She could have killed you," Grandma's voice broke. She knew exactly what she was doing. The four of us sat in stunned silence, watching the damning evidence again and again. The casual way she'd done it, the slight smile on her face as she stirred the peanut butter into my food, it was calculated, deliberate. I left the hospital against medical advice, driven by a mix of rage and disbelief. The video on Emma's phone felt heavy in my pocket, she'd sent it to me before I left. When I pulled up to my parents' house, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. They were all in the living room, Mom, Dad, and Sarah. acting as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't nearly died at their dinner table hours earlier. "What are you doing here?" Sarah asked, barely looking up from her phone. "Shouldn't you be in the hospital, being dramatic?" "I know what you did," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I know you put peanut butter in my food." Sarah's head snapped up, her face a mask of outrage. Mom jumped to her feet. "How dare you accuse your sister?" she spat. "Haven't you caused enough problems?" I pulled out my phone, pulled up the video, and pressed play. The room fell silent except for the damning evidence playing on the screen. Sarah, methodically stirring peanut butter into my food, that self-satisfied smirk on her face. The color drained from Sarah's face. Then, incredibly, she laughed. "Oh come on, it was just a prank. You're always so serious about everything." "A prank?" My voice shook. "I could have died. Do you understand that? The doctors said I barely made it." "Oh, please," Mom waved her hand dismissively. "You're being melodramatic. Sarah was just having a bit of fun." "Fun?" I stared at them in disbelief. I had anaphylactic shock. My heart nearly stopped. "Listen carefully," Dad's voice turned cold. "If you even think about taking this to the police, you're no longer our daughter. We'll disinherit you completely." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. These people weren't my family. They never had been. I walked out without another word, got in my car, and drove home. My hands were steady now. I knew exactly what I needed to do. Sitting at my computer, I uploaded the video to my social media. Below it, I wrote, "Today I learned what family truly means. And these people are not it. My own sister deliberately poisoned me with peanuts, knowing about my severe allergy. My parents called it a prank. This is the last time I will ever call them family." The response was immediate and explosive. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years commented in shock and outrage. Aunt Jessica shared the video, adding her own scathing commentary. Friends and colleagues expressed horror and support. My parents and Sarah fought back in the comments, calling me an attention seeker, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. But the video spoke for itself. The next morning, I walked into the police station and filed a formal report. That afternoon, my parents' lawyer delivered a formal document. They were officially disowning me and removing me from their will. Sarah posted a tearful video about how I was destroying the family with my lies. But I wasn't alone. Grandma called me that evening. "I've spoken to my lawyer," she said firmly. "I'm cutting them off completely. You're my only heir now, Audrey. You've always been more my daughter than Margaret's anyway." I sat on my couch that night, reading the flood of messages, support from real family members, from friends, from colleagues. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma, "You're still my favorite cousin. Mom says you can come over for dinner anytime." 7 years ago, I'd walked away from a toxic family. This time, I was running toward a real one. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have. Sometimes you have to build your own. The earliest memory I have of my mother is the scent of her lavender perfume. I was 4 years old when she died, but that fragrance still haunts me, especially on quiet nights when I'm alone in my room, trying to piece together the fragments of our brief time together. My name is Chloe, and this is the story of how I lost 2 families and found myself. I don't remember much from the weeks after Mom died. Most of my time was spent at my grandparents' house, a cozy 2-story home that would later play a crucial role in my life. Grandma Martha and Grandpa Joe tried their best to shield me from the pain, keeping me occupied with cookies and stories while Dad handled the funeral arrangements. 1 year passed in a blur of transitions between Dad's house and my grandparents'. I didn't realize it then, but looking back, I can see how Dad was gradually pulling away, spending less time with me and more time elsewhere. I'd hear snippets of adult worry, words like "too soon" and "moving on," but I was too young to understand their significance. I was 5 when Dad brought home the news that would change everything. I remember sitting on our worn living room couch, my small legs barely reaching the edge, when he walked in with a woman I'd seen a few times before. She had long brown hair and a kind smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Chloe, honey," Dad said, his voice carrying a forced cheerfulness that even my young mind detected, "this is Linda. We got married last weekend, and she's going to be your new mom." I stared at Linda's stomach, which showed a noticeable bump under her flowered dress. Dad followed my gaze and added, "And you're going to have a baby sister soon. Isn't that exciting?" The word exciting hung in the air like a lead balloon. Linda stepped forward, her hands clasped in front of her. "I know this is a lot to take in, Chloe. But I promise we'll make it work." I remember nodding, not because I agreed, but because it seemed like the thing to do. I retreated to my room that night and pulled out the only photo I had of my mom showing her holding me as a baby, both of us laughing at something off camera. I touched her face gently, trying to remember the sound of her laugh. It was strange watching Dad transform into a different person. The man who used to spend weekends taking me to the park now spent his time painting the nursery and attending birthing classes with Linda. I tried not to mind, really, I did. After all, Linda wasn't unkind to me. She'd drive me to school in her blue Honda, ask about my day, and make sure I had everything I needed. But there was always something temporary about her attention, like she was babysitting rather than parenting. I'd catch her absent-mindedly rubbing her growing belly while I told her about my day at school, her eyes glazed with thoughts of her own baby. "Linda, can we get ice cream?" I asked one afternoon after school. "Not today, sweetie. I need to rest, the baby's been kicking all day," she replied, heading straight for the couch. It became a common response, "Not today, maybe later, another time." Then Emma arrived. I remember the day Dad brought them home from the hospital. He was carrying this tiny bundle wrapped in a pink blanket, his face glowing with a pride I'd never seen before, not even in the photos of him holding me as a baby. "Chloe, meet your baby sister, Emma," he announced, his voice soft with wonder. I stood on my tiptoes to peek at the red-faced infant. "Hi, Emma," I whispered, trying to sound like the responsible big sister I was supposed to be. That's when everything changed. Suddenly, there were new rules in the house, all revolving around Emma. "Chloe, please don't run in the house, Emma's sleeping." "Chloe, can you help fold these clothes while I feed Emma?" "Not so loud, honey. You'll upset your sister." I became a shadow in my own home, tiptoeing around, trying to make myself smaller, quieter, less noticeable. My responsibilities grew while my privileges shrank. I learned to clean bottles, fold tiny clothes, and tidy up toys that weren't mine. One day, I came home from school to find Dad and Linda cooing over Emma, who was playing with a brand new tablet designed for babies. "Look how smart she is," Linda exclaimed as Emma randomly hit the screen. "She's going to be a genius." I glanced down at my worn-out sneakers, remembering how Dad had said we couldn't afford new ones this month. But here was Emma, barely able to walk, with the latest educational gadgets scattered around her. The pattern continued. Emma got designer clothes from the mall, while I got hand-me-downs from our cousins. She had a room full of the latest toys while I still treasured the stuffed bear my mom had given me, now missing an eye and patched in several places. It wasn't that they were cruel. They remembered to feed me, clothe me, send me to school. But it was always an afterthought, like checking off a box on a to-do list. The only time they seemed to really notice me was when Grandma and Grandpa visited. "Chloe needs new clothes," Grandma would point out, and suddenly Dad would remember to take me shopping. "Don't you think Chloe might like that new book series all the kids are reading?" Grandpa would suggest, and magically, the books would appear. I tried to be understanding. I really did. I kept my room clean, did my homework without being asked, and helped with Emma whenever they needed me. I thought if I was good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, they'd remember I was their daughter too. When Emma started walking and talking, I thought things would get better. I imagined us becoming best friends, sharing secrets, and playing together like the sisters I saw on TV. I even decorated half of my room with welcome signs the day she was old enough to string full sentences together. Want to play dolls with me, Emma? I asked hopefully one afternoon. She looked at me with those calculating eyes that seemed too old for her 4-year-old face. No, I want your dollhouse. But that's mine. Grandma gave it to me for Christmas, I protested. Emma's response was to march straight to Dad and Linda, her face scrunching up in that familiar way that meant trouble for me. Daddy, Chloe won't share her toys with me, she wailed, tears appearing on command. Chloe, Dad's voice boomed from the kitchen. Stop being selfish and let your sister play with your toys. That was just the beginning. Soon, Emma figured out she could take anything of mine she wanted. My art supplies, my books, even my clothes, nothing was off limits. When I tried to get them back, it always ended the same way. Mom, Chloe's being mean again. John, tell your daughter to stop bothering Emma. But the toy snatching was just the warm-up. Emma developed a talent for setting traps that would get me in trouble. Like the time she deliberately spilled juice on her new dress and told our parents I'd pushed her. Or when she broke her tablet and claimed I'd done it out of jealousy. Each time, I'd try to defend myself. That's not what happened. She's lying. And each time, Dad would shake his head disapprovingly. Stop trying to get attention, Chloe. Go to your room. My only refuge was at my grandparents' house. They saw through Emma's act and weren't afraid to say so. John, Grandpa would say to Dad during Sunday dinners, his voice firm but tired, you need to treat your daughters equally. We do treat them equally, Linda would snap back. But Chloe is just difficult. Always causing problems, always fighting with Emma. While Emma is such a sweet, well-behaved child. I'd sit there, pushing food around my plate, as Grandma's voice would rise. Open your eyes. That sweet child of yours is manipulating everyone in this house. You're raising a little con artist, and you can't even see it. Mother, please, Dad would try to intervene. You're being unfair to Emma. Unfair? Grandpa would scoff. What's unfair is watching you two spoil one child rotten while treating the other like she's invisible. That's what's unfair. But it was like talking to a wall. Dad and Linda had their narrative about their perfect younger daughter and their problematic older one, and nothing could shake it, not even the truth staring them in the face. Senior year should have been exciting, full of dreams about college and future plans. Instead, I found myself constantly worried about whether I'd even get to go. One night, as I was heading to the kitchen for a glass of water, I heard whispers that made me stop in my tracks. John, it doesn't make sense, Linda's voice was hushed but intense. The tuition money for Chloe, we could use it for Emma instead. Get her into that private high school she wants, and later, a better college. My heart stopped. They were talking about my college fund, the money Mom and Dad had started saving before I was even born. I can't, Dad replied, his voice weak. I promised Sarah. I promised her I'd make sure Chloe got an education. Sarah's been dead for 14 years. Linda's whisper turned sharp. You can't let promises to a dead woman control our lives forever. Emma deserves the best education we can give her. There was a long pause before Dad spoke again. My parents would disinherit me if I did that. You know how they are about Chloe. My legs felt weak. So that was it. The only reason Dad was keeping his promise to Mom was fear of losing his inheritance. Not love for me, not respect for Mom's memory, just money. Fine, Linda spat. But I think it's ridiculous we're spending so much on her when Emma could use it better. I slipped back to my room without the water, my throat too tight to swallow anyway. Graduation came and went. I got accepted to the local college's graphic design program, which meant I could live at home and save money. Grandma and Grandpa surprised me with a top-of-the-line laptop at my graduation party. This is for all those A's you earned, sweetheart, Grandpa said, hugging me tight. You'll need it for your design work. I was over the moon, finally, I had professional-grade equipment for my studies. But my excitement was tempered by transportation concerns. The campus was across town, and I hoped Dad might let me use his old Honda now that he had a new car. "Dad?" I approached him one evening. "About getting to college." "We can't afford another car, Chloe," he cut me off before I could finish. "The tuition payments are already stretching us thin. You'll have to take the bus." I nodded, swallowing my disappointment. But just 2 days later, I overheard them in the living room. "I think the red Mercedes would be perfect for Emma's sweet 16, Linda was saying. "She'll be learning to drive soon, and it's such a safe car for a new driver." "Isn't it a bit expensive?" Dad asked, but I could hear the smile in his voice. "Only the best for our little princess," Linda replied. "We can start saving now, she'll be 16 before we know it." I stood there, my bus pass clutched in my hand, thinking about the hour-long commute I'd be making each way while they planned to buy my 14-year-old sister a luxury car. 2 years into college, life had fallen into a predictable routine of classes, bus rides, and trying to stay invisible at home. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Chloe?" Grandma's voice sounded strained. "Could you come visit us this weekend? Your grandfather's had a bit of trouble with his heart, and we need to talk to you about something important." That Saturday, I found myself sitting in their familiar living room, the same place where I'd found refuge so many times during my childhood. Grandpa looked pale, but was sitting up in his armchair, Grandma perched on the armrest beside him. They exchanged a look I couldn't quite read, then Grandma took a deep breath. "Chloe, dear, we need to tell you something. After your grandfather's heart attack, we've done a lot of thinking about the future. We're getting old, sweetheart," Grandpa continued. "And maintaining this house is becoming too much for us. We've decided to move to Pine Grove Nursing Home." The tears came before I could stop them. But. Now, Grandma moved to sit beside me, pulling me into a hug that smelled of her signature lavender perfume, so similar to Mom's. "We'll have excellent care there. And you can visit anytime you want. I'll come every weekend," I promised through my tears. They both laughed, the sound warming the room. "You most certainly will not," Grandpa declared. "You're young. You should be out with friends, living your life, maybe meeting a nice boy." Then their faces grew serious again. Grandpa leaned forward in his chair. "There's something else we need to tell you. We've spent about half our savings on securing our place at Pine Grove. The rest will go to the family after we're gone." I started to protest that I didn't want to talk about this, but he held up his hand. "But the house," he continued, "we've already taken care of that. We've registered it in your name, Chloe. This house belongs to you now. It's all legal and official." My head spun. "Does Dad know?" Grandpa's face hardened slightly. "It's none of his business. This was our house to give, and we chose to give it to you." "But," I looked around at the familiar walls, the photos spanning generations, the corner where I used to hide during hide and seek. "Why?" "Because we're not blind," Grandma said softly. "And we want to make sure you're taken care of." I sat there, stunned, looking at these two people who had always been my strongest supporters, who had seen me when everyone else looked past me. "I won't tell them," I whispered, understanding instinctively that this needed to stay secret for now. Grandpa nodded approvingly. "Good girl. What's done is done, and it's no one's business but ours." 2 weeks passed in a blur of helping Grandma and Grandpa move to Pine Grove. The day they handed Dad the keys to their house, I felt my stomach twist. He had no idea those keys weren't really his to take. "This is wonderful," Linda gushed, already planning renovations in her head. "No more rent. We can finally have a real family home." They wasted no time moving us in. I watched silently as Linda walked through each room, her nose wrinkling at the vintage furniture and familiar decorations that held so many of my childhood memories. "This place needs a complete overhaul," she declared, running a finger along Grandma's antique sideboard. "And a deep clean. For now, the girls can share the blue room upstairs, it's the only one properly habitable." My heart sank. Share a room with Emma? At 16, she'd become even more impossible than before. As if on cue, Emma's shrill voice filled the house. "I am not sharing a room with her," she screamed, stamping her foot on Grandma's hardwood floors. "This isn't fair. I deserve the master bedroom. Why should I be stuck with her? Make her sleep in the closet or the basement or whatever. I don't care." I stood there, clutching a box of my belongings, as Emma's tantrum escalated. The familiar headache that came with her screaming started to pulse behind my eyes. I hate this. I hate this house. I hate having to share anything with her. I'd learned long ago that there was no point in arguing. Without a word, I carried my box upstairs to the blue room, the same room where I used to sleep during weekend visits with Grandma and Grandpa. I set my laptop on the old desk by the window, placed a few books beside it, and left for my afternoon classes. The whole bus ride to campus, I tried to focus on my upcoming design project, but Emma's words kept echoing in my head. She'd gotten worse over the years, if that was possible. More entitled, more cruel, more calculating. When I returned that evening, the house was quiet. Dad and Linda's voices drifted up from the kitchen, but there was no sign of Emma. I climbed the stairs to our shared room, my footsteps silent on the carpet runner Grandma had installed years ago. The moment I opened the door, my world stopped. My laptop, my beautiful graduation gift from Grandma and Grandpa, my lifeline for my design work, lay shattered on the floor. The screen was cracked beyond repair, the case bent and broken. Emma sat on her bed, a satisfied smirk playing on her lips as she watched my face crumple. "What did you do?" My voice came out as a whisper, then rose to a shout. "What did you do?" "Oops," she said, examining her perfectly manicured nails. "Accidents happen. But go ahead, try telling them. We both know who they'll believe." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I did it on purpose, and there's nothing you can do about it." Something inside me snapped. All the years of being pushed aside, ignored, gaslight, it all came rushing up like a tidal wave. Before I knew what I was doing, I lunged at Emma, my vision blurred with tears of rage. "You spoiled, entitled little brat," I screamed, grabbing her shoulders. She shrieked, not her usual calculated cry for attention, but a genuine sound of surprise. We tumbled onto the floor, years of pent-up frustration finally exploding. "Help! She's crazy! Help!" Emma screamed, while I kept shouting about all the times she'd destroyed my things, lied about me, made my life miserable. Dad and Linda burst into the room, Dad pulling me off Emma while Linda rushed to cradle her precious daughter. "Look!" I pointed at my shattered laptop, my voice breaking. "Look what she did. Grandma and Grandpa's graduation gift, she destroyed it on purpose." She admitted it. Emma's face transformed instantly, tears streaming down her cheeks as she clutched Linda. "It was an accident. I just bumped into the desk, I didn't mean to." And then she attacked me like a wild animal. "You evil, horrible girl." Linda shrieked at me, her face contorted with rage. "How dare you attack my daughter? John, I want her out of this house. Now. She's dangerous." I turned to Dad, desperately hoping he'd finally see through Emma's act. But his face was hard, closed off. "Pack your things," he said coldly. "And get out." The words hit me like physical blows. "Why?" I whispered, then found my voice. "Why do you always choose them? What happened to the dad who used to love me? Who promised Mom he'd take care of me?" His face reddened with anger. "Don't you dare bring your mother into this. You want to know the truth? You've been nothing but a burden since she died. A constant reminder of a past I wanted to forget. Linda and Emma are my real family now. You're just excess baggage we've been carrying around. You have 1 hour to leave my house." As he turned to leave, Emma's smug voice piped up. "I can finally have this room all to myself. I'm thinking pink walls, maybe a crystal chandelier." Linda joined in, already planning the renovation. "We'll get you new furniture, sweetheart. Make the space truly yours." Something shifted inside me at that moment. A lifetime of being pushed aside, of swallowing my words, of trying to be smaller, it all fell away. I stood up straighter, my voice clear and strong. Actually, this isn't your house to renovate. They all turned to stare at me. What are you talking about? Linda snapped. With steady hands, I reached into my purse and pulled out the property documents Grandpa had given me. This house belongs to me. Grandma and Grandpa transferred ownership to me before they moved to Pine Grove. If anyone's leaving, it's you three. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad snatched the papers from my hands, his face growing pale as he read. This can't be legal, Linda stuttered. John, call your father right now. Dad's hand shook as he dialed Grandpa's number, putting it on speaker. Dad, what is the meaning of this? He demanded. Grandpa's voice was calm, almost amused. I see Chloe's finally told you about the house. How could you do this to us? Dad's voice cracked. How could we do this? Grandpa's voice turned hard. How could you do what you've done to Chloe all these years? We watched you turn from a loving father into a spineless man who lets his wife and spoiled daughter walk all over him and abuse your firstborn child. Yes, we gave the house to Chloe. We knew this day would come, when you'd finally show your true colors. Dad started to respond with something angry, but Grandpa cut him off. Choose your next words very carefully, son. One more disrespectful word, and you and your precious Emma lose your inheritance too. Your choice. I looked at the three shocked faces before me, my father, Linda, and Emma. They'd gone from righteous anger to stunned silence in the span of minutes. Now Linda was backpedaling fast. Chloe, sweetie, we were just upset about the fight. We didn't really mean any of it. Of course we don't want you to leave. We were just joking. Her voice had that sickly sweet tone she used when trying to manipulate situations. I have a really bad sense of humor, I replied, my voice steady. So I'm going to take everything you said at face value. You have 1 week to find a new place and move out. I'll be staying at a hostel this week while you pack. I don't trust myself to be around any of you right now. Chloe, please, Dad started, but I cut him off. 1 week. After that, I'm changing the locks. I walked out of my grandparents' house, no, my house, that night with my head held high, even as tears streamed down my face. The hostel bed was uncomfortable, but it was better than staying under the same roof with people who'd just shown me exactly who they were. True to my word, they were out within the week. On moving day, they made one last attempt at reconciliation. We're so sorry, Dad said, standing in the doorway with the last box. We realize now how horrible we've been. Linda nodded, frantically. We never meant for things to go this far. Even Emma managed to look somewhat contrite, though she said nothing. I stood silently, watching them leave. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. 3 months later, I sat in Grandpa and Grandma's room at Pine Grove, telling them everything that had happened since moving day. The afternoon sun streamed through the window as Grandma poured tea into delicate cups. She'd insisted on bringing her good china to the nursing home. You did the right thing, standing up for yourself, Grandpa said, but his eyes were sad. Though I hope someday you can all find a way to be family again. Grandma reached over and squeezed my hand. But only when you're ready, dear. And only if they've truly changed. I nodded, telling them about my decision to rent out the house while I finished college. The rental income helped cover my expenses, and I'd found a small apartment closer to campus. I'd even been able to replace my laptop with the first month's rent. Dad called yesterday, I said quietly, stirring my tea. They're living in some rundown apartment complex on the edge of town. He apologized again, said they're struggling. And how do you feel about that? Grandma asked gently. Honestly? Part of me feels guilty, but another part thinks they needed to experience consequences for once. I set my cup down. I told him I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive them, or if I even want to try. That's fair, Grandpa said. Some wounds take a long time to heal. I'm graduating next semester with my degree in graphic design. I've already had some promising interviews with local agencies, and my portfolio is getting stronger every day. Sometimes I drive by the house and see the young family who's renting it now, their kids playing in the yard, lights glowing warmly in the windows at dusk. Maybe someday I'll move back in. Maybe someday I'll even be ready to have a relationship with Dad, Linda, and Emma again. But for now, I'm focused on building my own life, one where I don't have to make myself smaller to make room for anyone else. My name is Brittany, and I was working in the marketing department at Carson & Associates when our paths crossed. David worked in sales, just down the hall from my office. It started innocently enough. We kept running into each other in the office kitchen during lunch breaks. I'd heat up my sad microwave meals while he'd unpack his perfectly organized bento boxes. "Those look way better than my frozen dinners," I said one day, eyeing his colorful lunch spread. He grinned and pulled out an extra set of chopsticks. "Want to try?" My mom taught me how to cook, though I'm pretty sure she regrets it now. I stopped falling for her special recipes pretty quickly. That first shared lunch turned into daily lunch dates. We'd sit at the small table by the window, trading stories about our lives. I told him about growing up with my sensible parents in the suburbs, about my grandmother who'd gifted me my apartment before she passed away. He talked about his work, his hobbies, his dreams, but rarely about his family. After 3 months of lunches, he finally asked me out properly. "Dinner tonight? Somewhere that doesn't have a microwave or plastic cutlery?" I said yes, and that's how our real story began. We dated for a year, and it was wonderful. David was thoughtful, funny, and kind. When he suggested moving in together, it made perfect sense. My apartment had plenty of space, and we were spending most nights together anyway. Everything was perfect, except for one thing: I'd never met his family. He'd met mine within the first few months of dating. But whenever I brought up meeting his family, David would change the subject or make vague excuses. One night, after we'd been living together for a few months, I finally confronted him about it. We were curled up on the couch, watching a movie, when I paused it and turned to face him. "David, why haven't I met your family yet? Are you ashamed of me or something?" He let out a heavy sigh, running his hands through his dark hair. "God, no, Britt. I'm not ashamed of you, I'm ashamed of them." I laughed, thinking he was joking. "Come on, they can't be that bad." "They are." His voice was dead serious. "They're different. They think everything is a joke, and I mean everything. Even important moments, serious situations, they turn everything into some kind of cruel prank." I remember raising my eyebrows, still not quite believing him. "What do you mean? You want examples? Fine." He sat up straighter, his jaw tense. "When I was in high school, I had my first girlfriend over for dinner. My mom served spaghetti, but she'd replaced the noodles with rubber worms. My date screamed and threw up at the table. Everyone thought it was hilarious, except me and Sarah. She never spoke to me again." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. But there wasn't one. "Or how about when I had a big presentation in middle school? My brother replaced my notebook with an identical one filled with pornographic drawings. When I opened it in front of the class." He shook his head. "I got suspended for 2 weeks." As he continued sharing stories from his childhood, each one worse than the last, I began to understand why he'd been so hesitant to introduce me to his family. But I had no idea that I was about to become their next target. David proposed on a Tuesday. Nothing fancy, just the two of us in our kitchen, making breakfast. He pulled out a ring while I was flipping pancakes, and said, "I can't imagine my life without you, Britt. Will you marry me?" Of course, I said yes. And then, inevitably, came the words I'd been both dreading and curious about: "I guess it's time for you to meet my family." The Thompson family home was a charming 2-story colonial in the suburbs. Mrs. Thompson opened the door before we even reached the porch. She was a petite woman with David's warm brown eyes and a wide smile. Mr. Thompson stood behind her, tall and distinguished looking, and next to him was James, David's older brother. "Oh, finally!" Mrs. Thompson pulled me into a tight hug. We'd been dying to meet the woman who stole our David's heart. The initial conversation was surprisingly normal. We sat in their cozy living room, and they asked about my job, my family, how David and I met. They even cracked a few harmless jokes that made me laugh. I started to relax, thinking David had exaggerated their pranking tendencies. I caught him watching his family warily, like someone waiting for a bomb to explode. I thought he was being paranoid. "I'll get us some tea," Mrs. Thompson announced cheerfully. "Brittany, dear, how do you take yours?" "Just a splash of milk, please." When she returned with the tea tray, everyone was still chatting pleasantly. I took a big sip of my tea and immediately regretted it. My mouth exploded with salt and pepper, so much pepper it felt like I'd swallowed fire. I spat the tea back into the cup, but it was too late. My throat was burning. Tears streamed down my face as I coughed and gasped. The Thompsons burst into laughter. "Welcome to the family," James hooted. "Better get used to it, we love our little jokes." "That's how we show love here," Mr. Thompson added, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes. I ran to the kitchen, desperately searching for water. I found a glass and filled it with ice and water, drinking it in huge gulps. The pepper had made my nose run, and I could feel my carefully applied makeup streaming down my face along with my tears. From the living room, I could hear David's angry whispers, "What is wrong with you people? This isn't funny. She's going to be my wife." "Oh, lighten up," James replied. "It's just a joke." When I walked back into the living room, my face a mess of running mascara and smeared foundation, they took one look at me and started laughing again. "Look, she looks like a panda," James pointed at me, doubling over with laughter. That was the last straw for David. He jumped to his feet, his face red with anger. "You're all jerks. This is exactly why I didn't want to bring her here." He grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the door. In the car, David apologized over and over. I just hugged him, my face still burning from the pepper and humiliation. As we drove home, I realized David hadn't been exaggerating about his family at all. He'd been warning me. Planning a wedding is stressful enough, without having to worry about your future in-laws turning it into a practical joke playground. David and I spent weeks debating whether to invite his family at all. "We have to invite them," David finally said one night while we were addressing invitations. "They're still my parents, and no matter how much I hate their pranks, I'd regret not having them there." He called them the next day, putting the phone on speaker so I could hear. "Mom, Dad, listen carefully," his voice was stern. "You can come to the wedding, but I need your word, no pranks. This is the most important day of our lives, not a circus." "Of course, sweetheart," his mother chirped. "We'll behave, I promise." The day of the wedding started perfectly. The ceremony was beautiful, and during the reception, everything was going smoothly. David's family was actually behaving themselves, though I noticed David watching them like a hawk. Then came time for the cake cutting. Our cake was gorgeous, 4 tiers of white fondant with delicate sugar flowers cascading down the sides. But something was off. There were candles on it, lit candles. That wasn't part of our plan. I turned to David to mention it, but before I could get the words out, there was a loud pop. Then another, and another. The cake suddenly exploded, sending chunks of white cake and frosting flying everywhere. Most of it landed on me, completely ruining my wedding dress. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then I heard it, the familiar sound of the Thompsons' laughter. They were practically falling over themselves, pointing and howling with glee. "Your face," James gasped between laughs. "Oh my God, your face." I stood there, cake dripping down my dress, and burst into tears. Through my blurred vision, I saw David's face turn purple with rage. "Get out," he roared at his family. "Get out of my wedding right now." "You're overreacting," his mother said, looking bewildered. Everyone loves a good wedding prank. David didn't respond. Instead, he waved over the security team we'd hired, thank God for that decision, and had them escort his family out. My mother rushed over with napkins, trying to clean frosting off my face. My bridesmaids surrounded me protectively. Even David's Aunt Clara, who I'd just met that day, came over to help, shooting disgusted looks at her departing relatives. "I can't believe they're my brother's family," she muttered, helping to wipe cake from my hair. "This is a wedding, for heaven's sake, not a college fraternity party." Somehow, we salvaged the rest of the reception. Our friends and my family rallied around us, turning it into a joke we were all in on, rather than one at my expense. Someone found a backup cake. Apparently, our wedding planner had dealt with difficult families before, and we even managed to get some decent pictures taken after I changed into my backup dress. Life settled into a peaceful rhythm after the wedding disaster. David and I enjoyed our quiet existence in my grandmother's old apartment, far from his family's chaos. We transformed the spare bedroom into a home office, planning to use it that way for a few years, before maybe turning it into a nursery. But plans change. Just over a year after our wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. David was overjoyed, spinning me around our kitchen when I told him, though he quickly put me down when I turned green. We decided to keep it to ourselves for the first few months, telling only my parents. Somehow, though, news travels. I was 7 months along when David's phone rang one evening. "Your mother?" I asked, recognizing his expression. He nodded. "They know about the baby. Mom's insisting they have a right to meet their grandchild." I instinctively put my hands over my swollen belly. "No pranks around the baby," I said firmly. "Absolutely none," David agreed before answering the phone. When Emma was born, she was perfect, 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and David's warm brown eyes. We managed to keep the Thompsons away for the first 2 months, but their persistence wore us down. Just one visit, David negotiated with them. At our apartment, where we control the environment. "And if there's even a hint of a prank, you're out forever." They came on a Sunday afternoon. I watched them like a hawk as they cooed over Emma, looking for any sign of mischief. But they were surprisingly normal. Mrs. Thompson cradled Emma gently, tears in her eyes. Mr. Thompson proudly showed us pictures of his own father holding David as a baby. That visit led to others. They'd come over every few weeks, bringing appropriate gifts and behaving themselves. Still, I never fully relaxed around them. I refused every dinner invitation, remembering the pepper tea incident all too well. During one of their visits, while David was changing Emma's diaper, Mrs. Thompson started chatting about James. "Oh, he got married last month," she mentioned casually. "Such a small ceremony. Just at the courthouse. His Caroline refused to have a proper wedding." She shook her head disapprovingly. "I don't understand why." I bit my tongue to keep from saying, "Really? You don't understand why?" Instead, I just nodded, thinking about my own ruined wedding dress and exploding cake. I had a pretty good idea why Caroline opted for a courthouse ceremony, and honestly, I wished I'd done the same. In my head, I could imagine exactly how that conversation had gone between James and Caroline. She'd probably heard the stories about my wedding, or maybe she'd been subject to a few harmless pranks herself. Either way, smart girl, she'd found a way to avoid giving them any opportunity for their special brand of humor. Life has a way of shattering when you least expect it. One rainy Tuesday morning, David kissed Emma goodbye before school, kissed me goodbye before work, and walked out our door for the last time. A drunk driver ran a red light at 9:17 a.m. By 9:20, I was a widow. Emma didn't understand at first. She was only 7, too young to fully grasp the concept of never coming back. When I told her Daddy had died, she asked if he'd be home for dinner. Each time she asked, my heart broke all over again. The days leading up to the funeral passed in a blur. My mother practically moved in, handling arrangements, while I sat in a daze on the couch, holding Emma. I couldn't cry anymore. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me. The Thompsons came to the funeral with James and his wife Caroline. I barely registered their presence until it was time for the eulogies. I'd already spoken, sharing memories of David as a husband and father, his kindness, his gentle humor, how he'd taught Emma to ride her bike just last month. Then his parents stood up to speak. "David always loved a good joke," Mr. Thompson began, and I felt my stomach clench. "Remember when he was 5, and we convinced him his teddy bear had come alive and eaten all his Halloween candy?" Mrs. Thompson chimed in with a laugh. "Or that time in college when we sent him a fake acceptance letter to medical school, even though he never applied?" His face was priceless. The church was silent. No one laughed. I looked around and saw faces twisted in disbelief and secondhand embarrassment. Emma clutched my hand, confused. "And now he's up there," Mr. Thompson continued, grinning, "probably planning the ultimate prank on St. Peter." I felt something snap inside me. My whole body started shaking with rage. Emma must have felt it because she looked up at me with worried eyes. After the service, while people were gathering for the reception, I approached the Thompsons. My voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut glass. "How dare you?" I hissed. "How dare you turn my husband's funeral into a joke?" "Oh, Brittany," Mrs. Thompson reached for my arm. "David would have appreciated the humor. He always did." I jerked away from her touch. "No, he tolerated it. What you do is cruel and thoughtless. I never want to see any of you again. You're not welcome in our lives anymore. Emma and I are done with all of you." "But we're family," Mrs. Thompson protested, finally looking concerned. "No," I said firmly. "We're not. Family doesn't humiliate each other. Family doesn't ruin weddings or mock funerals. We're done." I turned and walked away, leaving them standing there, probably still wondering what they'd done wrong. They'd never understood, and they never would. 5 years passed like a blur. Emma grew from a grieving 7-year-old into a thoughtful 12-year-old who had her father's kind eyes and gentle spirit. I threw myself into being both mother and father, trying to fill the David-shaped hole in our lives. We heard bits and pieces about the Thompsons through the grapevine. James had 2 kids now. I'd seen pictures on social media of 2 boys with his mischievous grin. I always quickly scrolled past, determined to keep that chapter of our lives firmly closed. Sometimes Emma would ask about them, especially around holidays or when her friends talked about their grandparents. I never told her about the exploding wedding cake or the funeral jokes. She had enough complicated feelings about losing her dad without adding that mess to it. Then came the phone call, 3 days before Christmas. "Brittany?" Mrs. Thompson's voice was older, softer somehow. "Please don't hang up." I almost did anyway, but Emma was sitting next to me on the couch, working on her homework. She looked up, curious. "We miss Emma," Mrs. Thompson continued. "And you. Please, would you consider spending Christmas with us? The whole family will be there, James and Caroline, their boys. We'd love to see you both." I started to say no, but Emma, who had obviously figured out who was calling, began nodding enthusiastically. Her eyes were pleading. "There will be absolutely no pranks," I said firmly. "No jokes, no tricks, nothing like that. Just a normal Christmas dinner." "We promise," Mr. Thompson's voice joined in. They must have been on speakerphone. "We swear on David's memory. No pranks." Maybe it was the mention of David, or maybe it was Emma's hopeful face, but I found myself agreeing. "We'll come," I said. "But I mean it about the pranks." After hanging up, Emma and I went shopping. If we were doing this, we were doing it right. We picked out top-of-the-line kitchen appliances for the Thompsons, the latest tablet for James and Caroline, and the season's hottest toys for their boys. "Do you think Grandma and Grandpa got me something nice?" Emma asked as we wrapped the gifts. "I'm sure they did, sweetheart," I said, hoping I wasn't lying. "They've had 5 years to think about it." Emma threw herself into choosing wrapping paper and writing cards. I watched her excitement grow and prayed I wasn't making a horrible mistake by letting the Thompsons back into our lives. The Thompson house looked exactly the same as I remembered it, decorated with twinkling Christmas lights and a wreath on the door. Emma squeezed my hand as we walked up the path, our arms full of carefully wrapped presents. James and his family were already there when we arrived. His wife Caroline gave me a warm, almost apologetic smile as she helped us with our coats. Their boys, Mike and Tommy, hovered shyly behind their parents. The gift-giving started promisingly. Emma and I handed out our presents, and the reaction seemed genuine. Mrs. Thompson teared up over the expensive coffee maker, Mr. Thompson was thrilled with his new tablet, and the boys' faces lit up at their gaming consoles. Then came our turn. Mrs. Thompson handed Emma a wrapped box with a big smile, while Mr. Thompson passed me a similar one. Emma's fingers trembled slightly as she unwrapped hers, her first gift from her grandparents in 5 years. I'll never forget the look on her face when she opened that box. Inside was a plastic toy designed to look like dog poop, along with some clearly marked down items from the clearance bin. Emma's lower lip quivered as she stared at the contents. The laughter started immediately. Mr. Thompson and James were practically howling. Even the boys joined in, pointing at Emma's face. "Oh my God, look at them," James gasped between laughs. "Their expressions are priceless." My own box contained similar junk, expired candy, and items that still had clearance stickers on them. "That's enough," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "Where are the real presents?" Mrs. Thompson wiped tears of laughter from her eyes. "What do you mean? Those are the presents." "You can't be serious." I looked at each of them. "You haven't seen your granddaughter in 5 years, and you give her fake dog poop as a Christmas present?" They exchanged confused looks. "It's funny," Mr. Thompson insisted. "Come on, Brittany, learn to take a joke." I watched a tear roll down Emma's cheek, and something snapped inside me. Without a word, I stood up and walked over to Mike and Tommy. "I'm sorry, boys," I said, taking back the gaming consoles. "But these are returning to the store." "Mom," they wailed as I moved on to James and Caroline, collecting the tablet and other gifts. "Brittany, this is cruel," Mrs. Thompson protested as I took back their presents too. "Cruel?" I turned on her. "You gave a 12-year-old girl who lost her father fake dog poop for Christmas, and you're calling me cruel?" "It was just a joke," James started, but I cut him off. "We're leaving, Emma," I said. "Get your coat." The drive home was quiet. Emma stared out the window, clutching her empty gift bag. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," I finally said. "I really thought they'd changed." "It's okay, Mom," she replied softly. "Can we watch Christmas movies and make hot chocolate when we get home?" "Of course we can. We'll have our own Christmas, just us two." And that's exactly what we did. We spent the rest of Christmas Day in our pajamas, watching holiday movies, baking cookies, and trying to forget about the Thompsons and their idea of humor. The day after Christmas, I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw James's post. "Terrible Christmas yesterday. My sister-in-law showed her true colors, cruelly taking back Christmas presents from my crying children. Some people just don't understand family traditions and humor. My poor boys were heartbroken. Bad aunt, Christmas ruined." The comments flooded in immediately. "How horrible. What kind of person takes presents from children? She sounds toxic." My hands were shaking as I typed my response. "Let me tell you what really happened at Christmas yesterday." "You want to talk about cruel? Let me tell you about your family traditions. After 5 years of no contact, your parents gave their only granddaughter, a 12-year-old girl who lost her father, a toy that mimics dog feces as a Christmas present. They gave me clearance bin items with price tags still attached. Then they laughed at our pain. But this isn't new behavior. Let me tell you all about my wedding day, where they rigged our wedding cake to explode in my face. Or about my husband's funeral, where they thought it was appropriate to turn their son's eulogy into a stand-up comedy routine about pranking him as a child. You want to talk about toxic family traditions? Let's talk. I hit post and waited. Within minutes, other relatives started chiming in. Oh God, remember cousin Sarah's graduation? They replaced her diploma with a joke certificate during the photo op. They put laxatives in the punch at my baby's shower. They ruined my son's bar mitzvah with that trick Torah scroll. The tide turned quickly. Soon, James's original post was flooded with people sharing their own stories of the Thompsons' pranks. Caroline, James's wife, even liked several of the comments. The phone call started that evening. First James, Brittany, I never thought about it like that. Reading everyone's stories. God, we've been awful, haven't we? Then Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. We never meant to hurt anyone, Mrs. Thompson said, her voice shaking. We thought everyone was laughing with us. We thought it was all in good fun. We've always been this way, Mr. Thompson added. It's how we show love. But maybe we've been showing it wrong. I took a deep breath. You have to understand, your pranks aren't funny. They're cruel. They hurt people. They hurt your granddaughter. We see that now, Mrs. Thompson whispered. Can you ever forgive us? I don't know, I answered honestly. I'm glad you're finally realizing how your behavior affects others, but I can't just forget everything that's happened. 2 days later, a delivery truck brought a large package. Inside was the latest iPhone, the exact one Emma had been dreaming about, along with a heartfelt letter of apology from her grandparents. I sent James's boys their gaming consoles back, with a note, everyone deserves a real Christmas. Now, 6 months later, we have a cautious peace. We meet occasionally for coffee or lunch in neutral places. The Thompsons are trying, really trying, to change. No more pranks, no more cruel jokes. Emma video chats with her cousins sometimes, and I've seen genuine remorse in my in-laws' eyes. David would be proud of this progress, I think. He always hoped his family would understand someday. Maybe they finally do. I never thought I'd be telling this story, but here I am. My name is Jenna, and until recently, I thought I had a pretty good life. I worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, lived in a comfortable apartment in the suburbs, and had what I believed was a solid marriage to Mark, my husband of 10 years. Most importantly, we had our beautiful daughter, Sarah, who was the light of our lives. Mark and I met in college. He was the charming business major who always knew exactly what to say, and I was the quiet girl who preferred numbers to people. Somehow, we clicked. After graduation, we both landed decent jobs, got married, and started building our life together. When Sarah came along 2 years later, everything felt perfect. I can still remember the day everything changed. It was a regular Tuesday evening in March. Sarah, 8 at the time, was already in bed, and Mark and I were sitting at our kitchen table. He had that look on his face, the one that said he had something heavy on his mind. Jenna, we need to talk, he said, fidgeting with his coffee mug. I knew right then that whatever was coming wasn't good. What's wrong? I asked, though part of me already knew. There had been signs, late nights at work, mysterious phone calls, the emotional distance that had been growing between us. He took a deep breath. I've met someone else. Those 4 words hit me like a punch to the gut. Her name was Rebecca, he told me. She worked in his department. They'd been seeing each other for months. I'm sorry, he said, as if that made everything okay. I never meant for this to happen, but I think I'm in love with her. I sat there, numb, as he continued talking about how we'd grown apart and how Rebecca understood him in ways I never could. All I could think about was Sarah, sleeping peacefully upstairs, unaware that her world was about to be turned upside down. The next few weeks were a blur of mediation sessions and painful conversations. We agreed to keep things civil for Sarah's sake. In the end, I got our apartment, and Mark got the car and yacht, toys I never cared much about anyway. He agreed to pay generous child support, and we worked out a custody arrangement where Sarah would live primarily with me but spend regular time with her father. I know I've hurt you, Mark said during our final mediation session, but I want to do right by Sarah. I just nodded. What else could I say? The man I'd loved for a decade had betrayed me, but he was still Sarah's father. For her sake, I had to find a way to co-parent with him, to push aside my own hurt and anger. A year passed like a blur of workdays, homework help, and adjusting to our new routine. Sarah had just turned 9, and I was finally starting to feel like I had my feet under me again. Then came the wedding invitation, not for me, of course, but for Sarah. Mark was marrying Rebecca. They'd bought a house together, or rather, they were moving into her house, a sprawling 2-story in the nice part of town with a manicured lawn and a 3-car garage. The kind of place that screamed successful couple. The morning of the wedding, I helped Sarah get ready. She wore a pale blue dress we'd picked out together, and I braided her hair the way she liked it. "Are you sure you're okay with me going, Mom?" she asked, watching me in the mirror as I pinned back a stray strand. "Of course I am, sweetheart," I replied, meeting her eyes in the reflection. "She's going to be your stepmother. It's important that you two have a good relationship. But aren't you sad?" I turned her around to face me. "Listen to me, Sarah. What happened between your dad and me is grown-up stuff. It has nothing to do with you. I want you to have a good relationship with both your dad and Rebecca. No taking sides, okay?" She hugged me tight. "You're the best mom ever." Mark picked her up in his new SUV, and I spent the day cleaning the apartment and definitely not thinking about the wedding. When Sarah came home that night, she was full of stories about the ceremony, the cake, and the big house where she'd have her own room for visits. Life went on. I threw myself into work and taking care of Sarah. We developed our own little routines: Tuesday night movies, Saturday morning pancakes, long walks in the park on Sundays. Sarah split her time between our apartment and Mark's house, and things were okay. Not great, but okay. Then one day, Sarah came bouncing through the door after a weekend at her dad's, practically bursting with news. "Mom, guess what?" she exclaimed, dropping her backpack by the door. "Rebecca's pregnant. I'm going to have a little brother or sister." I felt like someone had punched me in the gut, but I kept my face neutral. "Really? That's big news." "Yeah, you can already see her belly a little bit." Dad's super excited. He kept talking about turning the guest room into a nursery. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. All I could think was, please, don't let this change how he treats Sarah. Don't let her become the forgotten first child. A month later, Sarah came home early from what was supposed to be a week-long stay at her dad's. She looked frustrated as she dragged her suitcase through the door. "Rebecca's really sick," she explained, flopping onto the couch. "She keeps throwing up and getting mad at everything. The smell of Dad's coffee made her cry this morning, and she said my laugh was too loud. So she asked if I could come home early." I sat down next to her, running my hand over her hair. That happens sometimes when women are pregnant. Their hormones make them extra sensitive to everything. I understood pregnancy symptoms all too well, remembering my own months of morning sickness when I was carrying Sarah. So I couldn't really blame Rebecca for being overwhelmed. A couple of weeks after Sarah's early return, Mark pulled up in front of our apartment to pick her up for another visit. I watched from the window as Sarah ran down to his car, her backpack bouncing against her back. Everything seemed normal enough. During the next 2 weeks, I called Sarah every evening. Our conversations were brief but reassuring. "Everything's good, Mom," she'd say. "We had pizza for dinner, or Dad's teaching me to play chess." When she finally came home, though, something seemed off. There were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before, and she moved more slowly than usual, like she was carrying a weight on her shoulders. "Honey, are you okay?" I asked, helping her unpack her bag. "You look tired." "Oh, I'm fine," she said, waving off my concern. "I've just been helping Rebecca around the house a bit. You know, cleaning and stuff. She can't do much right now, because of the baby. I even learned how to make spaghetti." My heart swelled with pride. I'd always tried to teach Sarah to be kind and helpful to others. "That's really sweet of you, honey," I said, giving her a hug. "I'm proud of you for helping out." Life went back to normal for a few weeks, until one evening when my phone rang. It was Mark. "Hey, Jenna," he said, his voice careful and measured. "I need to ask you a favor." According to our custody agreement, Sarah was supposed to spend the next month with me, but Mark had other ideas. "Would it be okay if Sarah stayed with us instead?" he asked. She and Rebecca have really been bonding lately. Sarah's been such a help around the house, and they've gotten really close. I pressed my lips together, considering. Let me ask Sarah what she wants. I called Sarah to the phone, and I could hear the hesitation in her voice as she listened to her father's request. But then Mark's tone changed, becoming excited. "Oh, and sweetheart, I've got a surprise for you," he said. "I just picked up that new computer game you've been talking about. The one with the dragons." "Mom, can I go?" Sarah turned to me, her eyes shining. "Please?" What could I say? Of course, if that's what you want. The next 2 weeks passed quietly. Mark took care of all the school runs, and Sarah seemed to be settling into a routine at their house. She sent me regular updates, photos of herself cooking in their fancy kitchen, shots of her playing her new game, pictures of her lounging on their plush living room couch. Everything looked fine on the surface. Still, something nagged at the back of my mind. Something about those photos felt staged. But I pushed the thought away. I was probably just being paranoid, letting my own feelings about Mark and Rebecca cloud my judgment. Sarah seemed happy enough in the pictures, and that's what mattered, right? When Sarah finally came home after that week, I barely recognized my own daughter. Her face was drawn and pale, with dark circles under her eyes that no 12-year-old should have. Her shoulders slumped as if she'd been carrying bricks. "Sarah, honey, what's wrong?" I asked, reaching for her. She just waved me off weakly. "I'm really tired, Mom. Can I go to bed?" "Don't you want dinner first?" But she was already dragging herself to her room. She didn't even change into her pajamas, just collapsed onto her bed and was out like a light. Something was very wrong. I waited until she was sound asleep before calling Mark. "What's going on over there?" I demanded. "Sarah looks completely exhausted." "Oh, here we go," Mark sighed. I could practically hear him rolling his eyes. "You're exaggerating, Jenna, as usual." "Exaggerating? Have you seen our daughter? She looks like she hasn't slept in days. She helped Rebecca with some housework. She's just not used to doing chores, probably because someone spoils her at home." The jab stung, but I pressed on. "This isn't about me, Mark. Something's not right." "She's fine," he insisted. "Kids today are so soft. A little work never hurt anyone. She'll adjust." I didn't sleep well that night, waiting for Sarah to wake up. When she finally emerged from her room the next afternoon, I sat her down at the kitchen table and made her favorite breakfast for lunch, chocolate chip pancakes. "Sweetie," I said, sliding a plate in front of her, "I need you to tell me what's really going on at your dad's house." Sarah pushed the pancakes around with her fork, not meeting my eyes. "It's nothing." "Sarah, please. I can see how tired you are. You can tell me anything, you know that." She was quiet for a long moment, then the words started tumbling out. "Rebecca doesn't do anything anymore. She says she can't because of the baby, but Mom, she makes me do everything. I have to clean the whole house, vacuum, dust, mop, everything. I have to cook too. She makes me cut up vegetables and use the stove, even though it scares me." My hands clenched into fists under the table. "What about relaxing? Don't you get any time to yourself?" Sarah's lower lip trembled. "I tried to watch TV after cleaning one day, but Rebecca said the noise gave her a headache. She just turned it off and told me to go to my room and be quiet. She says I laugh too loud and walk too heavy and I was already pulling out my phone, dialing Mark's number. He answered on the fourth ring. "What now, Jenna? What now? How about explaining why our daughter is being treated like Cinderella in your house?" My voice shook with anger. "She's 12 years old, Mark. She shouldn't be cooking and cleaning an entire house." "Sarah's exaggerating," he said dismissively. "Rebecca just asked for a little help, and we turned down the TV because it was too loud." "You're making this into something it's not." "She's scared to use the stove, Mark. She's exhausted. This isn't okay." The line went dead. He'd hung up on me. I stared at my phone in disbelief, then looked at Sarah, who was still pushing her pancakes around her plate. My daughter, my beautiful, kind-hearted daughter, who was being taken advantage of by the very people who should have been protecting her. After a few days, the situation became even more complicated. I was in the middle of reviewing quarterly reports at work when my phone rang. Seeing it was Sarah's school, my heart immediately jumped into my throat. "Mrs. Mitchell?" It was Mrs. Henderson, Sarah's homeroom teacher. "I needed to talk to you about Sarah's performance lately." I gripped my pen tighter. "Is everything okay?" "Well, that's just it. Sarah's grades have dropped significantly in the past month. She's falling asleep in class, her homework is often incomplete, and she seems exhausted. I know she's always been a good student, which is why this change is concerning. Is everything all right at home?" My pen snapped in half. "Thank you for letting me know, Mrs. Henderson. I'm aware of the situation and working on it." The moment I hung up, I tried calling Mark. Straight to voicemail. I sent him a text, "We need to talk about Sarah. Her grades are dropping. Call me ASAP." The little read notification appeared under my message almost immediately, but no response came. Not that day, not the next, not for 2 weeks. When Mark finally showed up at our door for his scheduled time with Sarah, I was ready. "She's not going," I said, blocking the doorway. His face darkened. "Excuse me? You heard me. Her grades are tanking, she's exhausted all the time, and her teacher is worried. This isn't healthy, Mark. You can't do this," he growled. "We have a custody agreement. If you violate it, I'll take you to court." "Go ahead. I'd love to explain to a judge how you're letting your pregnant wife use our daughter as free household labor." Mark pushed past me into the apartment, his face red with anger. Then his expression suddenly shifted, softening as he spotted Sarah hovering in the hallway. "Princess," he said, his voice gentle now. "Get your things. Don't worry about what your mom's saying, I promise you won't have to do any more housework. I just miss you, sweetheart. I want to spend time with my girl." I watched Sarah's face, saw her wavering. She looked at me, uncertain. "Just a minute," I said, pulling her aside while Mark waited by the door. I knelt down and whispered in her ear, "Take your phone with you. Turn on the voice recorder app. Record everything that happens there, what Rebecca says to you, what your dad says. It'll be our secret, okay?" Sarah's eyes widened slightly, then she gave me a tiny nod. I squeezed her hand and winked. "Remember," I whispered. "Don't let them know you're recording. This is just between us." She hurried to pack a bag while I stood watching Mark, who was checking his phone and pretending not to be angry. 5 minutes later, Sarah was ready. I hugged her tight before she left, feeling like I was sending my child into battle with nothing but a cell phone for armor. But sometimes the best weapons aren't the ones you can see. That week was torture. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd lunge for it, only to find another short text from Sarah, "I'm okay. Everything's fine. Don't worry." But mothers know when something's wrong, and everything in me screamed that things were far from fine. The doorbell rang on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened the door, there stood Sarah, soaking wet, shivering, and alone. "Oh my God," I gasped, pulling her inside. "Sarah, what happened? How did you get here?" "I ran away," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Took the bus." I looked at her hands as I helped her out of her wet jacket. They were red and raw, with calluses forming on her palms. She could barely keep her eyes open, and when she tried to take off her shoes, she winced in pain. "First things first," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's get you warm and fed." I made her favorite comfort food, grilled cheese and tomato soup, and watched as she practically inhaled it. Only when she'd finished eating did I dare to ask, "What happened, sweetheart?" Without a word, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking as she handed it to me. "The recordings," she said quietly. "Listen." I opened her voice recorder app, and what I heard made my blood run cold. "You stupid, clumsy girl," Rebecca's voice crackled through the speaker. "Can't you do anything right? Look at these floors, I can still see spots everywhere." "I'm trying my best," Sarah's small voice replied. "Your best isn't good enough. Do it again. And when you're done, there's laundry to fold and dinner to start." But I'm scared of using the stove." "Get out of my sight. Just get out, useless." My hands were shaking as I played recording after recording. Rebecca's voice grew more cruel with each one. "You think you're so special? Wait until my baby comes, then you'll really learn what work is. Free babysitter, that's what you'll be." Then came the conversation that broke my heart, Sarah pleading with her father. "Dad, please. Rebecca's making me do everything. I'm so tired." "Stop lying," Mark's voice was cold, unrecognizable. "You're just lazy. Do you know how much money I pay your mother? The least you can do is help around the house." "But Dad." "Listen to me carefully," his voice dropped to a threatening whisper. "If you tell your mother about any of this, I'll take her to court. I'll get full custody, and you'll never see her again. Do you understand?" I looked at my daughter, huddled in her chair, and felt a rage I'd never known before. This wasn't just about making a child do chores, this was abuse. Sarah burst into tears, and I held her until she stopped shaking, making promises I intended to keep. "I won't let them hurt you anymore, baby. You're safe now." After she calmed down, I called my sister, Amy. "I need a favor," I said, explaining the situation. She arrived within 20 minutes. The drive to Mark's house was a blur of rage and adrenaline. I jabbed the doorbell repeatedly until he yanked the door open. "What the hell are you?" I pushed past him into the foyer. "Where is she?" he demanded. "Sarah ran away, and I know you put her up to it. This is your fault, Jenna. You've spoiled her rotten, letting her do whatever she wants." Rebecca waddled up behind him, one hand protectively over her swollen belly. She nodded along with Mark's words, playing the perfect supportive wife. "You're the one who's turned her into a spoiled brat," Mark continued. "She thinks she's too good to help around the house." "Bullied her," I cut in, my voice ice cold. "You both bullied my 12-year-old daughter." They exchanged a look before breaking into dismissive laughter. "Oh, please," Rebecca rolled her eyes. "Sarah has quite an imagination. She's always making up stories." I pulled out my phone. "Really? Making up stories like this?" I pressed play. Rebecca's voice filled the room. "You stupid, clumsy girl. Can't you do anything right?" Their faces went slack with shock. I played more, Mark's threats about court, Rebecca's cruel words about using Sarah as a babysitter, all of it. Mark recovered first, his face turning ugly. "You think this changes anything? I have expensive lawyers. The best in the state. They'll tear you apart." "You're hurting me," Rebecca suddenly shrieked, clutching her belly. "Your fighting is stressing me out. I just wanted your daughter to help me." I turned to her, feeling oddly calm, despite my rage. "If you want to raise a maid so badly, wait for your own child. My daughter isn't your servant." Her face flushed red as she sputtered in outrage. Finally, I faced Mark. "You know what's really pathetic? Not that you left me, that hurt, but I got over it. What's pathetic is that you failed the one person you never should have failed. You stood there and let your wife abuse our daughter. You even helped her do it. What kind of father does that make you?" I didn't wait for an answer. I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving them standing in their perfect house with their perfect lawn. They could keep it all. I had something far more precious to protect. The next morning, I called the best family law attorney I could find, Linda Stevenson. The legal battle was exhausting. Mark's expensive lawyers painted me as a vindictive ex-wife, trying to poison my daughter against her father and his new family. They claimed I was cruel for not letting Sarah bond with her pregnant stepmother, that I was jealous of their perfect new life, that I was using Sarah as a weapon in my revenge against Mark. But then we played the recordings in court. I watched the judge's face darken as she listened to Rebecca berating Sarah, to Mark threatening our daughter, to their casual cruelty. The courtroom fell silent except for those damning voices coming through the speakers. Even Mark's fancy lawyers couldn't explain away their own recorded words. Sarah was brave enough to testify too. She sat in that witness chair, looking so small, but speaking with such clarity about what had happened. I saw several jury members wipe away tears as she described being afraid to use the stove but being forced to cook anyway, about how her hands hurt from scrubbing floors, about how she'd fallen asleep in class because she was so exhausted from all the housework. When the verdict came down, it was decisive. The judge granted me full custody, with Mark losing all visitation rights unless I explicitly permitted them. He would still have to pay child support, but he had no legal right to see Sarah without my approval. Mark exploded when the verdict was read. He stormed up to me outside the courtroom, his face red with rage. "Happy now?" he spat. "This is what you wanted all along, isn't it? Revenge because I left you for Rebecca?" I looked at him calmly, feeling nothing but pity. "You really don't get it, do you? This was never about us. This was about Sarah. But congratulations, Mark, you found yourself the perfect partner. She's just as cruel and manipulative as you are. You deserve each other." That was the last real conversation we ever had. Months passed. Sarah's grades improved dramatically once she wasn't exhausted from being treated like a servant. Her smile came back, and her laugh, that beautiful laugh that used to annoy Rebecca so much, filled our home again. We heard through mutual friends that Rebecca had given birth to a son. Mark sent a few texts asking to see Sarah, but they were half-hearted at best, and stopped entirely after a while. Sometimes I wondered if he ever truly understood what he'd lost, not just his daughter, but the chance to be the father she deserved. Sarah's 14 now, and the other day I overheard her talking to her best friend about the whole situation. "Aren't you sad about not seeing your dad?" her friend asked. "Sometimes," Sarah admitted. "But not seeing him is better than being treated like I'm worthless. Besides, I have the best mom in the world." I often look out the window, thinking about how far we'd come. The apartment might not be as fancy as Mark's big house, and we might not have expensive cars or yachts, but we have something much more valuable: peace, love, and respect. Sarah doesn't have to fear walking into her own home anymore. She doesn't have to be anyone's servant or scapegoat. She can just be herself, a bright, funny, kind-hearted teenager who deserves every happiness in the world. As for me, I've learned that sometimes the happy ending isn't the one you imagined. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes it's just a mom and her daughter, making pancakes on Saturday mornings, watching movies together, and filling their home with laughter that's as loud as they want it to be. I never thought fairy tales could come true until I got my own evil stepmother. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Ashley, and my early childhood was what most would consider normal, even privileged. My parents were successful business people, living in a beautiful two-story house in Connecticut. Dad worked hard building his company from the ground up, while Mom had her own priorities. She was rarely home, always out with her friends, especially her best friend Diana. They were inseparable, getting their nails done, having long lunches at fancy cafes, shopping at expensive boutiques. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, doing homework alone while Dad heated up another microwave dinner. "Where's Mom?" I'd ask, though I already knew the answer. "She's out with Diana again, sweetheart," Dad would say, trying to hide his disappointment. "But hey, how about we make this dinner special? I bought your favorite ice cream for dessert." That was Dad, always trying to fill both roles, to make everything okay. But even his best efforts couldn't prevent what happened when I was 9. I still remember that day with painful clarity. Mom came home late, as usual, but instead of sneaking up to her room, she called for a family meeting. "I'm leaving," she announced, her voice eerily calm. "I've fallen in love with someone else. We're moving to Europe next month. You can keep full custody of Ashley." Just like that, my mother erased herself from my life. She packed her things the next day and disappeared, leaving behind a shell-shocked father and a confused 9-year-old girl who couldn't understand why she wasn't enough for her own mother. That's when Diana started coming around more often. At first, I was glad to see her. She was familiar, a connection to my mom. She'd cook dinner for us, help me with my homework, and clean the house. She was everything Mom hadn't been. Dad seemed to brighten whenever she was around. Within months, they started dating, and 6 months after Mom left, Dad announced they were getting married. I remember feeling relieved. Diana had been so kind, so attentive. Maybe this was the mother figure I'd been missing. "Are you happy about this, Ashley?" Dad asked me after he told me about the engagement. "Yes," I said, nodding enthusiastically. "Diana's nice. She takes care of us." The wedding was beautiful, and Diana looked perfect in her white dress. She hugged me during the reception and whispered, "We're going to be such a happy family." I believed her. God, how I believed her. While they were on their honeymoon, I stayed with my grandmother, Dad's mom. Those were the last truly peaceful days I would have for a very long time. The day I returned from Grandma's house, I knew something was different the moment I walked through the door. Diana was sitting at the kitchen table, her posture rigid, hands folded neatly in front of her. Dad was there too, looking uncomfortable. "Ashley," Diana said, her voice lacking its usual warmth, "we need to talk about some changes." I sat down, still wearing my backpack from Grandma's. Dad shifted in his chair, not meeting my eyes. "Your father and I have been discussing your upbringing," Diana continued, her eyes fixed on me. "I've noticed some concerning similarities between you and your mother." "What do you mean?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "The way you act, your attitude, it's clear you need more structure. More discipline." She turned to Dad. "Don't you agree, honey? We don't want her turning out like her mother." I watched Dad's face carefully. He frowned slightly, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, maybe some structure would be good." "I'll handle everything," Diana quickly assured him, patting his hand. "You're so busy with work, darling. Let me take care of this." And just like that, my life changed. The next day, Diana laid out her new rules. First came the changes to my wardrobe. "We'll only be shopping at sales from now on," she announced. "Designer clothes are a waste of money for a growing girl." But that was just the beginning. The following weekend, when Dad usually gave me my weekly allowance, Diana intercepted. "About your pocket money," she said, her voice sickly sweet. "From now on, you'll have to earn it. Straight A's only. 1B, and no allowance for the week." "But Dad always," I started to protest. "Your father agrees with me," she cut me off. "Don't you, dear?" Dad, buried in his work laptop, just nodded absently. "Listen to Diana, Ashley. She knows what's best." The rules got stricter with each passing week. Diana started keeping a notebook, a detailed record of my every transgression. One morning, I rushed to school without making my bed. It went in the notebook. A glass left on the counter instead of being put in the dishwasher? In the notebook. Homework completed but not filed properly in my folder? Another mark. Every Friday, she'd sit me down and go through the list. Bed unmade on Monday, dishes left out on Wednesday, room not vacuumed on Thursday. She'd read with cold satisfaction. Well, it looks like no pocket money this week either. Maybe next week you'll try harder. I watched my previous life slip away, replaced by endless rules and restrictions. The worst part wasn't even the rules themselves, it was how she'd transformed from the warm, caring woman who'd helped with my homework into this cold, calculating figure who seemed to take pleasure in finding my faults. And my father, the man who used to be my biggest defender, had become a silent observer, too busy with work to notice what was happening in his own home. I tried talking to Dad multiple times about Diana's rules, catching him on rare moments when he wasn't buried in work. "Dad, can we talk?" I approached him one evening in his home office. He barely looked up from his computer screen. "What is it, Ashley? I'm really busy right now." "It's about Diana, and all these rules. Don't you think they're a bit excessive?" He finally stopped typing and sighed. "Look, honey, I know things are different now, but Diana's doing all the hard work around here. She's managing the household while I'm trying to keep the business running. We should appreciate that." "But Dad..." "Not now, Ashley. I have a conference call in 5 minutes. Thank God for Grandma. She was the only one who saw through Diana's perfect stepmother act. During one of her visits, she overheard Diana berating me for leaving a textbook on the coffee table. "This is ridiculous," Grandma exploded. "She's a child, not a soldier in boot camp." The argument that followed was explosive. Diana played the victim perfectly, crying to Dad about how his mother was undermining her parenting. "Your mother doesn't respect my position in this family," she sobbed. "How can I raise Ashley properly with her constantly interfering?" Dad, as usual, took Diana's side. The fight with Grandma was ugly. "If you can't support my wife," he told her, "maybe you should stop coming around for a while." Just like that, Grandma's regular visits stopped. But I found my way to her house after school whenever I could. She lived just 15 blocks away, and those visits became my sanctuary. "Don't let her break your spirit, sweetheart," Grandma would say, slipping me $20. "Hide this where she won't find it." I became an expert at hiding things: money, small gifts from Grandma, even my emotions. I had a loose floorboard under my bed where I kept my secret stash. Every time Diana's inspections got more intense, I'd touch that floorboard, reminding myself I had at least one person in my corner. Then came the conversation that changed everything. I was 15, heading to the kitchen for water late one night, when I heard voices from my parents' room. The door was cracked open, and Diana's words stopped me cold. "She doesn't deserve to have you pay for her college," Diana was saying. "You've seen how she behaves. All that attitude, just like her mother. If you keep pampering her like this, she'll end up exactly the same way, running off and abandoning her family." I held my breath, waiting for Dad to defend me. The silence stretched out painfully. Maybe you're right," he finally said, uncertainty clear in his voice. "But we did promise." "Promises to ungrateful children need to be reconsidered," Diana pushed. "Think about it, darling. We could use that money for our future instead." I didn't stay to hear more. Back in my room, I lay awake for hours, Diana's words echoing in my head. I knew her influence over Dad would only grow stronger. If I wanted a future, I'd have to make it happen myself. That night, I made a decision. I would study harder than ever before. Every free moment would be dedicated to schoolwork. I would get a full scholarship to college if it killed me. The next 2 years became a blur of studying, extracurricular activities, and competitions. I joined every academic club I could find: debate team, science club, math club. My weekends were spent either studying or participating in state competitions. The trophy shelf in my room slowly filled up with awards: first place in the state science fair, top speaker at the regional debate championship, perfect score on the math Olympiad. Diana couldn't stand it. Every achievement, every award seemed to irritate her more. But she couldn't criticize me anymore, not when teachers were calling home to praise my performance, not when local newspapers were featuring my academic achievements. Finally, graduation day arrived. I'd done it, a full scholarship to Marshall University in the neighboring state. The letter had come 2 weeks earlier, and I'd been waiting for the right moment to tell them. I chose dinner after graduation, thinking surely, on this day of all days, even Diana couldn't ruin things. I got into Marshall, I announced, still wearing my graduation gown. Full academic scholarship. Dad's face lit up. That's amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Then Diana wrapped her arms around Dad's shoulders, and I watched her face transform into that sickly sweet expression I'd grown to hate. "Oh, honey," she cooed, "this is wonderful news. But you know what would make it even better? If Ashley learned the value of true independence." Dad turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" "Well," Diana continued, her voice dripping with false concern, "we shouldn't spoil her too much. The scholarship is great, but maybe she should pay for her own housing? Get a job, learn some responsibility?" I watched in disbelief as Dad nodded slowly. "That actually makes sense." Something inside me snapped. All the years of pent-up frustration, all the silent suffering, everything came pouring out at once. "Makes sense?" I stood up so quickly, my chair fell backward. "Nothing about this makes sense. You've let her control everything for years. She's turned this house into a prison, and you just sit there and nod along with whatever she says." "Ashley," Dad started, but I wasn't finished. "You already had money saved for my college." "I know you did, I heard you talking about it years ago." "But let me guess, Diana, you convinced him to spend it on something else, didn't you? Just like you convinced him to stop letting Grandma visit, to stop being my father." Diana's face turned red with rage. "How dare you," she shrieked, jumping up from her chair. "After everything we've done for you. Is this how you show gratitude?" "Gratitude?" I laughed bitterly. "For what? For making my teenage years a living hell? For taking my weekly allowance? See?" Diana turned to Dad, tears suddenly appearing in her eyes. "This is exactly what I've been warning you about. She doesn't respect you at all. All she cares about is money, money, money. Just like her mother." I watched Dad's face change, hardening into something I'd never seen before. He stood up slowly, his hands shaking. "Get out," he said quietly. "Diana's right, you've become exactly like your mother. Selfish, ungrateful, only thinking about yourself. I won't have another woman like that in my house. Pack your things and leave." The words hit me like physical blows. Behind Dad's shoulder, I could see Diana's triumphant smirk, quickly hidden behind a hand raised in fake distress. I ran upstairs to my room, tears blurring my vision. My hands shook as I threw clothes into my suitcase, grabbed my awards and photos, and emptied my secret stash from under the floorboard. The whole time, I could hear Diana's voice downstairs, consoling Dad, "It's not your fault, honey. Some people just can't be helped." Grandma's house was only a 15-minute drive away, but it felt like hours. She opened the door, took one look at my tear-stained face, and pulled me into a fierce hug. "He kicked me out," I sobbed into her shoulder. "He said I'm just like Mom." "Your father's a fool," she said firmly, helping me with my bags. "But you're not going to let them win. You're stronger than that." I stayed with Grandma through the summer, working at a local bookstore to save up money. She helped me research apartments near Marshall University, and when August came, she handed me an envelope. "It's not much," she said, "but it should cover your first few months' rent. The rest is up to you." College life was hard at first. I found a tiny studio apartment that I could barely afford, and got a job as a waitress at a cafe near campus. My schedule was brutal: morning classes, afternoon study sessions in the library, evening shifts at the cafe, then homework until midnight. But it was worth it. Every time I felt like giving up, I remembered Diana's smirk, and it gave me the energy to keep going. The years passed quickly. I made friends, earned top grades, and slowly built a new life for myself. My phone never rang with calls from home, not on birthdays, not on holidays, not even when I made the dean's list every semester. The only connection to my old life was Grandma, who called every Sunday without fail. After graduation, I was offered a position at Anderson and Mitchell, one of the top consulting firms in the city. The starting salary was more than enough for me to afford a nice one-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood. I framed my diploma and hung it next to my job offer letter, tangible proof that I'd made it on my own. I met Mike at a coffee shop near my office. It was such a cliché, I literally bumped into him while rushing to get my morning latte, spilling his drink all over his suit. I insisted on buying him a new one, and somehow that turned into dinner that evening. Mike was different from anyone I'd ever met, kind, genuine, and completely devoted to his family. Meeting his parents showed me what a real, loving family looked like. After a year of dating, Mike took me to that same coffee shop where we'd met. He got down on one knee right there, pulling out a beautiful diamond ring. "Ashley," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "will you marry me?" I said yes through tears of joy, and the entire coffee shop erupted in applause. Later that evening, I posted a photo of us on Instagram, me showing off the ring, Mike kissing my cheek, both of us grinning like idiots. The call came exactly 1 week later. I was at work when an unknown number flashed on my phone. Something made me answer it. "Hello, Ashley," the voice sent chills down my spine. "It's been a while." "Diana?" My hand tightened around the phone. "How did you get my number?" "Oh, I have my ways," she laughed softly. "I saw your engagement announcement. Quite a lovely ring. You must be so excited to plan the wedding. What do you want?" "To help, of course." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "You know, every bride deserves to have her father walk her down the aisle." My heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about a deal, dear. A simple transaction, really. $25,000, and I'll convince your father to reconcile with you. I'll make sure he's there to walk you down the aisle on your big day." I felt sick. "And if I refuse?" "Well," she chuckled, "let's just say your father won't be attending the wedding. You know how he is, he does everything I say. I manage all our money, and that fool doesn't even question where it goes." She kept talking, her voice growing more smug with each word. "Remember when I convinced him to kick you out? So easy. Men are such simple creatures, really. A few tears, the right words at the right time. Your father's particularly stupid that way." My hand was shaking, but not from fear. With my other hand, I'd already pulled up the voice recorder app on my work phone and hit record. Diana's voice kept flowing, detailing years of manipulation and deceit. "So what do you say, dear? 25,000 is a small price to pay for a father's love, isn't it?" I forced myself to keep my voice steady. "I need to think about it." "Don't think too long. The offer expires in a week." She hung up with a click. I sat at my desk, staring at the recording on my phone. 7 minutes and 32 seconds of Diana revealing her true nature. 7 minutes and 32 seconds that could change everything. That evening, I played the recording for Mike in our apartment. His face darkened with each passing second. "We need to send this to your father right now," he said, reaching for his phone. I put my hand over his. "No, I have a better idea." I smiled, already opening my laptop. She's always been so careful to maintain her perfect image. Let's see how she likes having her true colors shown to the world. I uploaded the recording to my social media accounts with a simple caption: "My stepmother's wedding gift demand, $25,000 to let my father walk me down the aisle. Listen to the end." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, the post had hundreds of shares. Comments flooded in, many from people who knew Diana personally. "I can't believe this is the same woman who leads our church committee. She told me you'd abandoned your family. I'm so sorry I believed her. This explains why she suddenly had that new car last year." The truth about Diana was spreading like wildfire through our small community. Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling, post by post, share by share. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Dad. "Can you come home?" His voice sounded rough, like he'd been crying. "Please, Ashley, we need to talk." I drove the 4 hours back to my childhood home the next day. The house looked exactly the same from the outside, but something felt different. Diana's expensive SUV wasn't in the driveway. Her prized rose bushes were untended. Dad opened the door before I could knock. He looked older, tired, his hair grayer than I remembered. We stood there awkwardly for a moment before he pulled me into a tight hug. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. No sign of Diana. "She's gone," Dad said, answering my unspoken question. "I kicked her out the day after I heard that recording. Filed for divorce the next morning." He slumped into his favorite armchair, looking defeated. "I've been such a fool, Ashley. All these years, I was so blind. The way she manipulated me, turned me against you, against my own mother." His voice cracked. "I believed every lie she told me. I let her destroy our family." Tears started rolling down his cheeks. "I threw you out, my own daughter. I chose her over you. How can you ever forgive me?" I sat on the arm of his chair, like I used to do when I was little. "I forgive you, Dad." He looked up, surprised. "But," I continued, "I need time. We can't just pretend those years didn't happen. We need to rebuild our relationship, slowly." The next 6 months were a journey of healing. Dad and I started with weekly phone calls, awkward at first, but gradually becoming more natural. We met for coffee every other weekend, sometimes just the two of us, sometimes with Mike joining us. Grandma started visiting the house again, and watching Dad rebuild his relationship with her helped me believe in second chances. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings moved forward. Diana tried to fight for half of everything, but Dad's lawyer used the recording as evidence of her manipulation and deceit. In the end, she got far less than she'd hoped for. She moved out of state, and rumors said she was already looking for her next victim. But we never heard from her again. Dad started therapy, working through his guilt and understanding how he'd let himself be manipulated for so long. During one of our coffee meetings, he told me something that finally helped me understand those lost years. "After your mother left," he said, stirring his coffee absently, "I was so scared of failing you that I let someone else take control. I thought I was protecting you, but instead, I was just running away from my responsibilities as a father." The wedding planning brought us even closer. Dad insisted on helping with everything, from venue hunting to taste testing cakes. He even joined Mike's family for the rehearsal dinner, fitting in perfectly with their warm, boisterous dynamic. On the morning of my wedding, Dad arrived early at the bridal suite. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, but his hands were shaking as he knocked on the door. "Ready for this?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. I was already in my dress, Grandma putting the finishing touches on my veil. "I've been ready for this moment my whole life, Dad." He took my hand, and we stood waiting behind the church doors. The wedding march began to play. "Ashley," he whispered, "I know I missed so many important moments in your life. But I promise you, I'm here for all the ones to come." The doors opened, and we started down the aisle. I saw Mike waiting at the altar, beaming. I saw our friends and family smiling, Grandma in the front row already dabbing at her eyes. But mostly, I felt my father's arm steady and strong beneath my hand, finally being the support I'd always needed him to be. At the altar, when the minister asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" Dad's voice rang out clear and strong, "Her grandmother and I do." Later, during the reception, I watched Dad dancing with Grandma, both of them laughing like I hadn't seen in years. Mike came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Happy?" he asked. I leaned back against him, taking in the scene before me, my family, broken and rebuilt, stronger at the mended places. More than I ever thought possible. People say you can't choose your family, but that's not entirely true. Sometimes you have to lose your family to find it again. Sometimes the happy ending isn't about everything being perfect, but about learning to love the imperfect pieces and building something new from them. Diana's been gone from our lives for months now, and good riddance. But in a way, I'm almost grateful for what happened. Without the darkness she brought, I might never have learned how strong I could be, might never have experienced the joy of rebuilding what was broken. I came into this world during what you might call the worst possible timing. My parents' marriage was already hanging by a thread, and my arrival didn't exactly help matters. I'm Nicole, and my father Tom wasn't exactly thrilled when Mom told him she was pregnant. "You planned this, didn't you, Sarah?" he shouted during one of their fights. "Got pregnant on purpose just to trap me here." I've heard this story so many times from Mom that I can almost see it playing out, even though I wasn't old enough to remember it myself. Mom always said Dad was too carefree, too irresponsible to be a real family man. He'd rather spend his paycheck on whatever caught his fancy than save for our future. Their arguments echoed through our small house for 4 long years after I was born. Sometimes they were about money, sometimes about Dad's late nights out, sometimes about me. It seemed like everything was a trigger for another explosive fight. When I turned 5, they finally made it official and got divorced. Dad didn't stick around to see how that worked out. He just vanished. No goodbye, no forwarding address, not a single child support payment. It was like he'd never existed, except for the hole he left in our lives and Mom's growing bitterness. "Your father is nothing but a selfish coward," Mom would tell me whenever I asked about him. "A real man doesn't abandon his child." She'd get this hard look in her eyes every time his name came up, and eventually, I learned to stop asking. The only connection I had left to Dad's side of the family was my grandmother, Eleanor. She and Mom couldn't stand each other. Grandma Eleanor blamed Mom for the failed marriage, saying she'd pushed Dad away with her constant nagging about money and responsibility. Mom, in turn, couldn't even bear to be in the same room as Grandma. When it was time for my visits with Grandma Eleanor, Mom would drive me to her house, practically drop me at the doorstep, and leave without even stepping inside. But once inside, everything changed. Grandma Eleanor would wrap me in warm hugs and tell me stories about Dad when he was young. She'd run her fingers through my hair and smile softly. "You look just like your father, sweetheart," she'd say. "You have his eyes, his smile, even that little dimple when you laugh." 3 years passed in a blur of weekend visits to Grandma Eleanor's house, filled with cookies, stories, and the warmth I couldn't find at home. By the time I turned 8, I had settled into a routine of sorts, weekdays with Mom, who was still bitter about Dad, and those precious weekends with Grandma, who never stopped hoping he'd return. But everything changed one rainy Tuesday in October. Mom got a call that made her face turn pale. "Get your coat, Nicole," she said, her voice unusually quiet. "Grandma Eleanor wants to see us both. It's important." The drive to Grandma's house was different this time. Usually, Mom would just drop me off and speed away, but today she parked the car and actually walked with me to the door. Something was wrong, I could feel it in the heavy silence between us. Grandma Eleanor looked smaller somehow, lying in her bed with papers scattered around her. Her usually perfectly styled silver hair was messy, and her face had a grayish tinge that scared me. But she smiled when she saw us, reaching out her thin hands. "Sarah, Nicole, thank you for coming," she said, her voice weaker than I'd ever heard it. "Please, sit down. Both of you." Mom actually sat down without argument, which was when I knew this was really serious. Grandma Eleanor's lawyer, Mr. Peterson, was there too, standing quietly in the corner like a somber statue. "I need to discuss something important," Grandma said, looking first at me, then at Mom. "I'm not well, and I need to make sure everything is properly arranged." She paused to catch her breath. "My house and part of my savings will go to your Aunt Linda, Nicole. But I've set up something special for you." I remember playing with the hem of my sweater, not really understanding what was happening. Adult conversations about arrangements and papers always bored me, but I knew I was supposed to pay attention. "I'm creating an educational fund for Nicole," Grandma continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke about her plans. It will cover her college expenses when she turns 18. Mr. Peterson here will manage it until then. Mom's posture changed at these words. She sat up straighter, her eyes widening slightly. I noticed her hands, usually fidgety with anxiety, grow still in her lap. The money can only be accessed for educational purposes, and Nicole will have full control of it when she turns 18, Mr. Peterson added, stepping forward with some papers. Mrs. Eleanor has been very specific about these terms. I sat there, swinging my legs back and forth, more interested in the pattern of the wallpaper than in what they were discussing. College seemed like something from another lifetime. I was more concerned about my upcoming spelling test and whether Jenny Martinez would invite me to her birthday party. Everything is arranged, Sarah, Grandma said, reaching for Mom's hand. For once, Mom didn't pull away. I want to make sure my granddaughter has opportunities, regardless of everything else. The unspoken mention of Dad hung in the air between them. After signing some papers and saying our goodbyes, Mom and I drove home in silence. But this silence felt different from our usual tense quiet. It was almost peaceful. As we pulled into our driveway, Mom turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before. Well, she said, a hint of a smile playing at her lips, it seems at least one person in your father's family turned out to be decent after all. I didn't fully grasp the significance of that day until much later. At 8 years old, all I knew was that Grandma Eleanor had done something nice for me, and for once, Mom wasn't angry about it. The concept of college money meant nothing to me then. I was more excited about the butterscotch candy Grandma had slipped into my pocket when we left. Grandma Eleanor passed away just a few weeks after our last visit. The funeral was small and quiet, and I noticed Mom actually shed a few tears, though she tried to hide them. With Grandma gone, it felt like the last bridge to my father's world had crumbled away. Life moved on, as it always does. Over the next 2 years, Mom started dating a guy named Robert. He seemed nice enough, he had a good job at a bank, drove a nice car, and always brought me small gifts when he came to visit. Mom smiled more when he was around, and I hadn't seen her smile like that in years. Then they decided to get married. I was 10 at the time, and the prospect of having a complete family again made my heart flutter with excitement. But the real news came when Mom told me Robert had a daughter my age named Ashley, who would be moving in with us. I remember jumping up and down, my mind filled with visions of sharing secrets, having sleepovers in the same room, and finally having someone to play with who wasn't just a school friend. After years of being an only child in a broken home, the idea of having a sister seemed like a dream come true. The day they moved in, I had decorated our shared room with welcome signs and laid out some of my favorite books and toys to share. Ashley walked in, took one look around, and asked her dad if she could have her own room instead. I don't want to share with her, she said, not even bothering to lower her voice. She's not really my sister. That was just the beginning. Ashley quickly staked her claim on Mom's attention. She'd curl up next to her on the couch during movie nights, pushing me to the side. She started calling Mom Mommy within the first week, and Mom's face would light up every time she did. Mom, want to see my art project? I'd ask, holding up my drawing. In a minute, honey, Mom would reply, but that minute never came because Ashley would already be showing Mom her homework or telling her about her day. When I finally broke down and told Mom how I felt, her response cut deep. Don't be selfish, Nicole, she said, barely looking up from helping Ashley with her homework. Ashley lost her mother when she was very young. She needs extra attention and a woman's love. You should understand that. But what about my love? I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded and retreated to my newly silent room, where Ashley's empty bed served as a constant reminder that I wasn't enough, not for my father, and now, it seemed, not for my mother either. The changes in our family happened so gradually that at first, I barely noticed them. But looking back now, I can see how each small moment added up to create an ever-widening gap between me and my mother. It started with shopping trips. Mom would come home with bags full of designer clothes for Ashley, fancy jeans, brand name sneakers, cute tops from expensive stores. Meanwhile, I got my clothes from department store sales and discount outlets. Ashley needs to maintain a certain appearance at her new school, Mom would say when I pointed out the difference. Besides, you're not as interested in fashion as she is. Then came the biggest bombshell: they were sending Ashley to Riverside Prep, the expensive private school across town. I still remember the day they announced it over dinner. Ashley's test scores are exceptional, Robert said proudly. She needs a more challenging academic environment. What about me? I asked, pushing my peas around my plate. Could I go to Riverside too? Mom and Robert exchanged that look I'd come to hate, the one that meant they'd already discussed this without me. Honey, you're doing fine at Lincoln Public, Mom said. Ashley has different needs. She's really gifted, you know. The regular program suits you better. That night, I cried into my pillow until I had no tears left. But something changed in me after that. As the years passed, I stopped trying to compete for Mom's attention. I stopped showing her my report cards, stopped telling her about my achievements, stopped hoping she'd notice me. By 15, I'd accepted my place in the family hierarchy. I threw myself into my studies at Lincoln Public, not for them, but for myself. I joined the debate team, competed in science fairs, and maintained straight A's. My teachers would write glowing comments on my papers: exceptional analysis, Nicole, outstanding work, you have a bright future ahead. Meanwhile, at home, dinner conversations revolved around Ashley's latest achievements at Riverside Prep. Her participation in the Model UN conference. Her selection for the Advanced Placement program. Her tennis tournaments against other private schools. Ashley's English teacher says she has real potential as a writer, Mom would gush. She gets straight A's without even trying, Robert would add proudly. I'd sit there quietly eating my dinner, thinking about my own straight A's, about how I'd just won first place in the regional science fair, about how my debate team coach wanted me to lead the team next year. But I kept these thoughts to myself. What was the point of sharing them? My achievements at a public school couldn't possibly compare to Ashley's private school accomplishments, at least not in their eyes. Still, there were moments, like when Mom and Robert would attend every single one of Ashley's tennis matches but couldn't make it to my debate team finals, that the old hurt would surface. But I'd learned to push it down, to focus on what I could control. I had my education, my goals, and thanks to Grandma Eleanor's foresight, I had a future that was mine alone. Senior year flew by in a whirlwind of college applications and scholarship essays. As graduation approached, I found myself sitting at my desk late into the night, surrounded by brochures from different universities. My grades had opened up a lot of possibilities. I was particularly excited about State University's full scholarship program and had already been pre-approved based on my academic record. You don't have to take the scholarship route, you know, my guidance counselor, Mrs. Martinez, had told me. With your grandmother's college fund, you could attend any school you want. But I had bigger plans for that money. I want to be smart about it, I explained to her. If I can get a full scholarship, I can save the fund for a down payment on a house after graduation. Mrs. Martinez had smiled at that. Always thinking ahead, aren't you, Nicole? 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, Mom called me down for what she termed a family meeting. I found them all sitting in the living room, Mom perched nervously on the edge of her favorite armchair, Robert looking serious on the couch, and Ashley beside him, not quite meeting my eyes. Sit down, Nicole, Mom said, patting the ottoman across from her. We need to discuss something important. I sat, noting how formal everything felt. Usually, family discussions happened over dinner or in passing, never with this kind of setup. As you know, Mom began, Ashley is graduating this year too. She paused, glancing at my stepsister. We've been looking at colleges. I got accepted to Princeton, Ashley interrupted, finally looking at me. It's my dream school. That's, congratulations, I said, not sure why this required a family meeting. The thing is, Robert jumped in, even with Ashley's excellent education at Riverside Prep, her grades don't quite qualify her for a full scholarship. Mom leaned forward. We've spent so much on her private school education, and it's been worth every penny, but we just don't have the resources for Princeton's tuition. I sat there, still not understanding why they were telling me this. Then Mom dropped the bomb. We were hoping, since you have your grandmother's college fund, you might be willing to share it with Ashley. The room went silent. I stared at Mom, waiting for her to say she was joking. But her face remained serious, expectant even. Share my college fund? I repeated slowly. The one Grandma Eleanor set up specifically for my education? You're getting a full scholarship anyway, Ashley said, as if this justified everything. You don't even need the money. We're family, Mom added softly. Family helps each other. I sat there, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The college fund, my safety net, my future, my grandmother's last gift to me, they wanted me to hand it over to Ashley. The same Ashley who'd spent years making sure I knew I wasn't really family. The same Ashley who got everything while I got the leftovers. No, the word came out of my mouth before I could even process the full weight of what they were asking. Absolutely not. What do you mean, no? Mom's voice took on that sharp edge I'd grown to know so well. I mean no. This money was left to me by my grandmother. It's mine, and I'm going to use it for my future. Robert's face turned red. Do you hear how selfish she sounds, Sarah? This is exactly what I've been talking about for years. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Selfish? That's rich coming from you guys. Watch your tone, young lady, Robert snapped. You've always been jealous of Ashley. Always trying to compete with her, and now you're taking your revenge by denying her a chance at a good education. The absurdity of his statement made me laugh again, though there was no humor in it. Jealous? Of what exactly? Of how you've given her everything while treating me like an afterthought. And by the way, if she's as brilliant as you've always claimed, why didn't she earn a scholarship like I did? Ashley's face crumpled, and tears started streaming down her cheeks. She jumped up from the couch and ran upstairs, her dramatic exit punctuated by the slamming of her bedroom door. How dare you? Mom's voice was quiet, dangerous. How dare you be so cruel? Cruel? I'm being cruel? I stood up, my hands shaking. You're the ones trying to take away my college fund. Mom stood too, her face hard. Well, then, let me make this very clear. You have 2 weeks until your birthday to change your mind. If you don't agree to share that money with your sister, you can find somewhere else to live. The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. What? You're kicking me out? This is my house too. No, Nicole, it's not. Mom's voice was cold. This house is in my name. You'll be 18, an adult. I'm not legally obligated to support you anymore. I can't believe this, I whispered. I can't believe you're choosing her over me. Again. You're choosing money over family, Robert shot back. Family? I practically spat the word. When have you ever treated me like family? They had no answer for that. Instead, Mom just said, 2 weeks, Nicole. Think carefully about your choice. The next 3 days were like living in a ghost town where I was the only ghost. No one spoke to me at breakfast. My questions at dinner were met with silence. Ashley acted like I was invisible, and Mom and Robert treated me like an unwelcome houseguest who had overstayed their welcome. I ate my meals in my room, spent my free time at the library, and tried to make myself as scarce as possible. But every night, lying in my bed, I could hear them in the living room, talking, laughing, watching TV together. A happy family of 3, with no room for a 4th. For days after that disastrous family meeting, I called Mr. Peterson, my grandmother's lawyer. My hands were shaking as I dialed his number, but his warm, familiar voice helped calm my nerves. Nicole, I was just thinking about you. Your 18th birthday is coming up soon. Yes, Mr. Peterson, that's actually why I'm calling. I took a deep breath and told him everything, the demand for money, the ultimatum, all of it. He listened quietly until I finished, then cleared his throat. Those funds are legally yours to control the moment you turn 18, Nicole. Your grandmother was very specific about that. And frankly, I think she suspected something like this might happen someday. What do you mean? Let's just say she knew her son's ex-wife very well. He paused. Now, about your living situation. Look, here's what I suggest. Pick your college first, preferably one in a different city, then find an apartment nearby. I can help you with the paperwork. You won't be able to access the funds until your birthday, but we can get everything set up in advance. I spent that afternoon researching apartments near State University, where I'd already been accepted with a full scholarship. By evening, I'd found a small but decent place, just a 10-minute walk from campus. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, was willing to hold it for me with just a promise of payment on my birthday. For the next week, I quietly packed my life into boxes, one small piece at a time. I didn't want anyone to notice what I was doing. Each night, after everyone was asleep, I'd pack another box and hide it in my closet. Photos, books, clothes, my life condensed into cardboard containers. On the morning of my 18th birthday, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. "Well?" she asked, arms crossed. "Have you made your decision?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt strangely calm. "Yes, I have. The answer is still no." "Then you know what that means." Her voice was hard. "I want you out of this house today." "Okay," I said simply. I think my calm acceptance threw her off. She probably expected tears or begging. Instead, I went upstairs, got my pre-packed boxes, and called the taxi I'd scheduled the day before. 20 minutes later, I was turning the key in the lock of my new apartment. The first thing I did was call Mr. Peterson, who had all the paperwork ready. By noon, I had access to my grandmother's fund. By 1 o'clock, I'd paid my first month's rent and security deposit to Mrs. Chen. That afternoon, I walked to the local coffee shop where I'd applied for a job the week before. The manager, Mike, had already agreed to hire me for the summer before college started. My apartment was small, just a studio with a kitchenette, but it was mine. That night, as I sat on my newly purchased air mattress, eating takeout and watching the sunset through my single window, I felt something unexpected: freedom. 2 weeks into my new life, I was scrolling through Facebook during my coffee shop break when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Friends from high school were messaging me, "Have you seen your mom's post? Are you okay? What's going on?" With shaking hands, I pulled up Mom's page and there it was, a long, dramatic post about ungrateful children and family loyalty. "My daughter has broken our hearts," she wrote. "After everything we've done for her, she selfishly refused to help her sister get a college education. Instead, she's hoarding money from her grandmother while her sister's dreams are put on hold. I never thought I'd raise such a selfish, heartless child." The comments below were worse. Relatives I barely knew were chiming in, "How could she be so ungrateful? Family should come first. What a spoiled brat." I sat there in the break room, my coffee getting cold, as anger and hurt battled inside me. Then something snapped. If Mom wanted to air our dirty laundry on social media, fine. Let's tell the whole story. I opened my laptop and started typing. "Since my mother has chosen to make our private family matters public, let me share my side of the story. Yes, I refused to give my stepsister my college fund, money that my grandmother specifically left for my education. What my mother forgot to mention is that she gave me an ultimatum: either give up my inheritance or get kicked out of the house. On my 18th birthday, she followed through on that threat. I was forced to move out because I wouldn't give away money that legally belonged to me. For years, I watched as my stepsister got private school education while I went to public school. I watched as she got expensive clothes while I got department store leftovers. I worked hard, got straight A's, and earned a full scholarship to college, something I'm proud of. But apparently, that wasn't enough. They wanted my inheritance too. So yes, I chose to keep my grandmother's gift to me. And yes, I'm now living on my own, working and preparing for college. But I didn't choose this situation, my mother did when she kicked her own daughter out on her birthday. I hit post and went back to work. By the time my shift ended, the response was overwhelming. Former teachers, neighbors, even some of Mom's old friends were commenting with messages of support. People who'd known our family for years started sharing stories of how they'd noticed the favoritism but never said anything. My phone rang that evening. Mom's name flashed on the screen. "How dare you?" she hissed when I answered. "Do you know how humiliating this is? Mrs. Peterson from church won't even look at me anymore. Half my friends are questioning my parenting." "Maybe they should," I said calmly. "You kicked your daughter out for not giving away her inheritance. What kind of parent does that?" "I did everything for you." "No, Mom. You did everything for Ashley. And that's fine, she's your daughter now, but I'm done. Goodbye, Mom." I hung up and blocked her number. Then I blocked her on all social media, along with Robert and Ashley. It was surprisingly easy, like cutting away dead weight I'd been carrying for years. Now I'm in my first semester at State University, studying business management. My small apartment feels more like home every day. Sometimes I think about them, Mom, Robert, and Ashley, but those thoughts come less and less often. Grandma Eleanor's picture sits on my desk, and sometimes I swear she's smiling at me with pride. She knew, somehow, that I'd need this money not just for education, but for freedom. She gave me the means to choose my own path, and I'll never forget that. I'm Audrey, and I came into this world mere minutes after my twin sister Ashley. Those few minutes might as well have been years, given how differently our lives would unfold. Our parents, Linda and Robert Matthews, lived in a suburban house in Connecticut. Mom worked as a real estate agent, always dressed to impress, with her perfectly manicured nails and designer suits. Dad ran his own small accounting firm, spending most of his days buried in spreadsheets and tax forms. They seemed like your typical middle-class family, except for one thing, their obvious favoritism toward Ashley. I first noticed it when we were around 5. It was subtle at first, the kind of thing you might miss if you weren't living it every day. While other parents of twins dressed their children identically, celebrating their matching status, our parents made sure Ashley stood out. They'd take us shopping, and Ashley would get the new Nike sneakers while I got the clearance rack specials. She got the authentic Barbie dolls, I got the knockoffs from the dollar store. Even our birthday celebrations felt uneven. Ashley's portion of our shared cake always seemed bigger, her pile of presents always taller. These little moments piled up like stones in my pocket, weighing me down day after day. When Ashley got her ears pierced at 6, I wasn't even asked if I wanted mine done too. When she started taking ballet lessons, I was told we couldn't afford 2 sets of lessons. Somehow, though, there was always money for Ashley's growing list of activities: gymnastics, piano, art classes. Our early childhood photos tell the story better than I ever could. In every family picture, Ashley's front and center, usually in some frilly dress from an expensive children's boutique. I'm always somewhere in the background, wearing whatever was on clearance at Target, looking like an afterthought in my own family portraits. Maybe they just don't see it, I remember telling myself at night, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on our shared bedroom ceiling. Ashley had twice as many stars on her side of the room. Even the universe above our beds played favorites. The worst part wasn't the material differences. Kids can survive without designer clothes and fancy toys. It was the way they looked at her versus how they looked at me. When Ashley spoke, they leaned in, hanging on every word. When I spoke, their eyes would drift, their attention already moving on to something else, someone else. Always to Ashley. As we approached school age, I held on to hope that things would change. Maybe once we were in school, once teachers and other adults were involved, our parents would see us both equally. Maybe they'd realize that having twins wasn't a burden but a blessing. Maybe they'd finally see me. I remember standing in front of our house that first morning, Ashley and I in our new uniforms, Mom taking pictures. For once, we looked identical, same plaid skirt, same white blouse, same navy cardigan. I thought maybe this was the beginning of change. "Girls, smile," Mom called out, but her eyes were fixed on Ashley. "Ashley, honey, tilt your head a little to the right. Perfect." The familiar ache in my chest returned. Even in identical clothes, she found ways to make Ashley shine brighter. Our classroom was bright and cheerful, with alphabet charts on the walls and tiny desks arranged in neat rows. Mrs. Thompson, our teacher, sat us alphabetically, Matthews and Matthews, side by side. I was thrilled. Finally, someone who would treat us the same. But after school, the old patterns emerged stronger than ever. Mom's silver SUV would pull up to the curb, and what happened next became a daily routine that felt like a twist of the knife. "Audrey, go straight home and start your homework," Mom would say, barely looking at me as I climbed out of the car. Then she'd turn to Ashley with a bright smile. "Ready for dance class, sweetheart?" Off they'd go, to ballet on Mondays, piano on Tuesdays, art class on Wednesdays, gymnastics on Thursdays, and drama club on Fridays. I'd watch them drive away, then walk into our empty house, the silence my only companion. I threw myself into my studies, thinking that maybe, just maybe, if I got perfect grades, they'd notice me. I'd sit at the kitchen table, methodically working through math problems, practicing my spelling words, reading ahead in our textbooks. The house would stay quiet for hours, until I'd hear the garage door open and their voices floating in, Ashley chattering about her latest achievement, Mom's proud responses echoing through the halls. "Mom, I got an A+ on my history test," I said one evening, holding up my paper. "That's nice, dear," she replied distractedly, helping Ashley unpack her dance bag. "Ashley, show Dad the new routine you learned today." I kept trying. Every perfect score, every teacher's praise, every gold star, I collected them like precious gems, hoping one day they'd be enough to make my parents' eyes light up the way they did for Ashley. Then came the night that changed everything. I was 12, heading to the kitchen for a glass of water after finishing my homework. Their voices drifted up from the den, where they often sat after Ashley went to bed. I normally ignored their late-night conversations, but something made me stop this time. "Sometimes I wonder if we made a mistake," Dad was saying, his voice heavy with something I couldn't identify. "What do you mean?" Mom asked. "Having twins. Ashley would have been enough. She's everything we could want in a daughter. But two of them." "I know what you mean," Mom sighed. "Ashley's special. She's meant for great things. But Audrey, she's just there. We would have been fine with just Ashley." The glass slipped from my hand, but I caught it before it could shatter. I wished I could catch my heart just as easily. In that moment, everything crystallized. The years of trying to earn their love, of hoping things would change, it all seemed so foolish now. They didn't want me. They never had. I was the unwanted twin, the extra daughter, the one they wished they didn't have. After that night, something shifted inside me. I stopped seeking approval and instead focused entirely on my studies. Turns out, freedom from constantly trying to please my parents cleared my mind in ways I never expected. My grades, already good, became exceptional. "Excellent analysis, Audrey," Mr. Peterson said one day in English class, holding up my essay on The Great Gatsby. "Class, this is exactly the kind of deep thinking I'm looking for." I could feel Ashley tensing up beside me, her pencil tapping against her desk in that aggressive way it did when she was angry. I kept my eyes forward, but I could see her face turning red from the corner of my eye. Similar scenes played out in other classes. Math, science, history, it didn't matter. The more the teachers praised my work, the more Ashley seethed. It came to a head in chemistry when Mrs. Rodriguez asked me to tutor other students. That evening, I heard Ashley's voice from downstairs, "Mom, the teachers are being mean to me. They always praise Audrey and make me look bad. They're doing it on purpose." The next day, Mom stormed into school, designer handbag swinging, heels clicking against the linoleum floors. I watched from the hallway as she marched into Principal Williams' office, where they'd called in Mrs. Chen, our class teacher. "I want to know why your teachers are discriminating against my daughter," Mom demanded. Mrs. Chen, bless her, stayed calm and professional. "Mrs. Matthews, let me show you something." She pulled out our progress logs, laying them side by side. "Here are both girls' records. Audrey consistently scores in the top percentile in all subjects. Ashley's grades are." "Are you suggesting my Ashley isn't smart?" Mom interrupted. "Not at all. I'm merely pointing out that Audrey's academic achievements are." "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're all biased against Ashley." No amount of evidence could convince her. When she came home that day, I overheard her telling Dad that the teachers were obviously prejudiced against their precious Ashley. By 16, I was tired of asking for pocket money and watching Ashley get hundreds of dollars just for existing. I applied for a job at the Coffee Bean, a cute cafe just a few blocks from our house. It wasn't glamorous work, but I loved the independence it gave me. Plus, my coworkers actually appreciated my presence, a novel experience in my life. Ashley, of course, couldn't let me have even this small victory. "Oh my God, you're actually going to be a waitress," she sneered one morning, watching me put on my uniform. "That's so common." "Mom, can you believe Audrey's going to serve people food?" Mom just made a disapproving noise, sliding another $100 bill across the table to Ashley for her shopping needs. That's when I remembered something I'd overheard years ago, a heated phone conversation where Mom had yelled, "I don't want anything to do with you anymore. You're embarrassing with your tiny house and your budget clothes. I've moved up in the world." She'd been talking to her parents, my grandparents. The ones I'd never met because they weren't good enough for her new lifestyle. That evening, while Mom and Ashley were at another shopping spree, I snuck into Mom's home office. In her address book, under D4, Do Not Contact, I found an address in the older part of town. The next day, instead of heading to my afternoon shift at the cafe, I took a bus to a small blue house with a well-tended garden. My heart was pounding as I walked up the path. I had no idea what to expect, but I knew I had to try. I raised my hand to knock on the door. The door opened, revealing an elderly couple. The woman had gray hair tied back in a neat bun, and the man wore wire-rimmed glasses. They looked at me with confusion until I spoke. "Hi, I'm Audrey Matthews. I think you're my grandparents." Their jaws dropped simultaneously. The woman, my grandmother, put her hand to her mouth. "Oh my God, Frank, it's really her." They invited me in, and suddenly I was sitting in their cozy living room, drinking tea from delicate cups while they couldn't stop staring at me. "You look just like your mother did at your age," Grandma said softly. Before she changed. That first visit turned into many more. I'd tell my parents I was working extra shifts at the cafe, but instead, I'd spend hours with my grandparents, bringing them pastries and cookies from work. They were wonderful listeners, genuinely interested in my life, my studies, my dreams. For the first time, I felt seen. Then came graduation day. The ceremony was typically Matthew's family style, all focus on Ashley. When they called my name as valedictorian, my parents barely clapped, but when Ashley walked across the stage, they hooped and hollered like she'd just won an Olympic medal. I should have been prepared for what came the next day, but somehow, they still managed to shock me. "Girls, we have exciting news," Mom announced at breakfast, practically bouncing in her seat. "We're celebrating graduation in Hawaii." My heart lifted for a moment. Despite everything, I thought maybe, just maybe, this one time. "Honey," Mom turned to me, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, "we only got 3 tickets, for us and Ashley. You understand, right? Someone needs to watch the house, and you have your job at the cafe." Ashley didn't even try to hide her smirk as she stirred her orange juice. "Don't worry, sis. I'll send you lots of pictures of me living my best life on the beach." The next morning, I watched from our front door as they loaded their expensive luggage into the taxi. Ashley turned back, waving with exaggerated enthusiasm. I'll make sure to send you beautiful photos from Hawaii. You can look at them between serving tables. As soon as the taxi disappeared around the corner, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called my grandparents. The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over when I heard Grandma's voice. They went to Hawaii without me, I managed to get out between sobs. They just left me here like I'm nothing. Oh, sweetheart, Grandma's voice was soft but firm. Come over right now. We'll have our own graduation celebration. I drove to their house, still wiping away tears. As I turned onto their street, I noticed something unusual, a brand new Mercedes C-Class sedan parked in their driveway, gleaming in the summer sun. It looked completely out of place next to their modest home. Whose car is that? I asked as I walked up to their front porch. Grandpa's eyes twinkled as he held up a set of keys. Yours. Happy graduation, Audrey. I stood there, mouth open, sure I'd misheard him. What? But how? I thought. Sit down, dear, Grandma patted the porch swing. We have something to tell you. They explained how, after Mom cut ties with them, they'd invested their modest savings in several tech startups. Those investments had paid off spectacularly, but they'd chosen to keep living simply in their familiar home. Your mother left us because she thought we were too poor, too beneath her, Grandpa said, shaking his head. The irony is, we're probably wealthier than she is now. We just don't feel the need to show it off. We'd been waiting for the right moment to help you, Grandma added. And this seemed perfect. I hugged them both, overwhelmed by their generosity and love. They ushered me inside, where they'd prepared a beautiful graduation lunch. The table was set with their best china, and a congratulations graduate banner hung across the dining room. Over homemade lasagna and garlic bread, they asked about my college plans. Actually, I said, feeling proud, I got accepted to Princeton with a full academic scholarship. I start in the fall. Their faces lit up with genuine joy, so different from my parents' lukewarm reaction when I'd told them. That's wonderful, Grandma exclaimed. But what about housing? The scholarship covers that? Well, I was planning to live in the dorms. Nonsense, Grandpa cut in. We'll get you a nice apartment near campus. Something safe and comfortable where you can focus on your studies. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Ashley, sending a photo of herself lounging on a Hawaiian beach, captioned, "Wish you were here, not." I looked at the message, then at my grandparents' loving faces, then at the keys to my new car sitting next to my plate. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the lesser twin. 2 weeks crawled by. I spent my days working at the cafe, visiting my grandparents, and preparing for college. Each evening, my phone would buzz with another notification, Ashley posing on different beaches, dining at expensive restaurants, or lounging by infinity pools. Each photo was accompanied by increasingly obnoxious captions, "Living my best life while someone serves coffee. This is what success looks like. Some people vacation in Hawaii, others just dream about it." Then came the day of their return. I was in the living room, pretending to read a book while watching through the window. The taxi pulled up, and I couldn't help but smile as I saw their reactions unfold in slow motion. Mom noticed it first. She stopped so abruptly that Ashley walked right into her, dropping her designer beach bag onto the concrete driveway. Dad, struggling with their expensive matching luggage set, nearly tripped over them both. "What is that?" Mom's voice carried through the front window, high-pitched and sharp. She was pointing at the Mercedes as if it might bite her, her perfectly manicured finger trembling slightly. Is that a new C-Class?" Dad stammered, his jaw hanging open. "The latest model?" I took my time walking to the front door, enjoying every second of their confusion. Their tan seemed to pale with each step I took. When I stepped onto the porch, they all turned to stare at me like they were seeing a ghost. "Whose car is that?" Dad demanded, his face red from both the Hawaiian sun and shock. I twirled the keys around my finger, the way Ashley always did with her designer purse straps when she was showing off. "Mine." Ashley let out a bark of laughter, but I could hear the uncertainty in it. Yeah, right. Like you could afford that on your waitress salary. What did you do, steal it? Rob the cafe? Or are you just parking it for some rich customer? Actually, I said, savoring each word like the expensive chocolates they'd never shared with me, it was a graduation gift. From Grandma and Grandpa. The color drained from Mom's tanned face so fast I thought she might faint. What? You know, your parents? The ones you were too embarrassed to talk to because they were too poor? Those grandparents. Dad turned to Mom so fast I thought he might get whiplash. Linda, call your parents. Right now. His voice had that same demanding tone he used when ordering at restaurants. Mom's hand shook as she pulled out her phone, her French manicure catching the sunlight. She didn't even bother with pleasantries when Grandma answered, putting the phone on speaker without realizing it. Where did you get the money for that car? She demanded, her voice echoing in our front yard. I could hear Grandma's voice through the phone, calm and slightly amused. Oh, hello to you too, dear. Enjoying your expensive vacation? I saw all the lovely photos Ashley posted. The Royal Hawaiian Hotel looks lovely this time of year. Don't change the subject. How could you afford to buy Audrey a Mercedes? Well, sweetheart, Grandma's voice dripped with satisfaction, it seems you underestimated us. Those embarrassing parents you were so ashamed of? We're quite comfortable now. More than comfortable, actually. We're rich. Mom's entire demeanor changed instantly, her voice becoming syrupy sweet. Mom, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we put the past behind us. Family is so important, after all. Is it? Grandma's voice was cool. Of course. And speaking of family, Mom's eyes darted to Ashley, who was already preening. You have another granddaughter who would love to get to know you. She could really use a nice car too, maybe even something a little more special? Grandpa's laugh crackled through the speaker. You mean the granddaughter you just took to Hawaii while leaving Audrey alone? That granddaughter? Mom's face flushed. That's not. I mean, look, as grandparents, you should treat the girls equally. They're the same age, after all. It's only fair they get the same gifts. Equally? Grandma's voice turned sharp. That's rich coming from you, Linda. Parents should love their children equally too. But that hasn't been the case in your household, has it? The line went dead. Mom stared at her phone for a moment before turning to me, her expression hardening. Audrey, you need to give that car to your sister. Excuse me? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ashley needs a good car for college, Dad jumped in. She got accepted to State University. She needs reliable transportation. You're just working at that cafe, you don't need anything this fancy. Ashley was already walking toward the Mercedes, hand outstretched. Give me the keys, sis. You know, I'll look better driving it anyway. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity of it all was just too much. This is my car, I said firmly. And I'm not giving it to anyone. Dad stepped forward, his face red with anger. If you don't give that car to your sister right now, you can get out of this house. Funny you should say that, I said, walking to the Mercedes. I popped the trunk, revealing my packed suitcases and boxes. I'd been ready to leave for days. Their mouths hung open as I pulled an envelope from my purse and held it up. Oh, and by the way, I won't be serving coffee much longer. I got accepted to Princeton on a full scholarship. Ashley's shriek could probably be heard 3 blocks away. Mom stumbled backward like I'd slapped her. Dad just stood there, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. I got into my car, the leather seat still new enough to creak slightly. Through the windshield, I could see their shocked faces, their perfect family fantasy crumbling before their eyes. Those last few weeks of summer at my grandparents' house were the happiest I'd ever experienced. Every morning, I'd wake up to the smell of Grandma's coffee and the sound of Grandpa humming as he read the newspaper. No walking on eggshells, no competing for attention, no feeling like an unwanted shadow. Just peace. Moving to Princeton was bittersweet. I hugged my grandparents goodbye, promising to call every day, and set off in my Mercedes with everything I owned. The drive to New Jersey felt like crossing a boundary between my old life and my new one. My grandparents had found me a beautiful little apartment just 10 minutes from campus. Nothing flashy, but worlds better than any dorm room, hardwood floors, big windows, and even a small balcony where I could study. They'd insisted on paying the rent, despite my protests. I still wanted some independence, though, so I got a part-time job at a local coffee shop. The irony wasn't lost on me, still serving coffee, but this time by choice, not necessity. My co-workers were mostly other students, and for the first time in my life, I found myself making real friends. One Sunday afternoon, about a month into the semester, Grandma called with some interesting news. "Your parents showed up at our door yesterday," she said. My heart skipped a beat. What did they want? Oh, the usual. Linda was all smiles and fake apologies, asking about our financial situation and hinting about Ashley's upcoming birthday. Your father kept looking around the house, probably trying to guess our net worth. What did you tell them? Grandpa's voice joined in on the line. We told them that we'd already decided what to do with our money. It's all going to you. I could picture their faces. How did they take that? Let's just say Linda's smile didn't look so genuine after that, Grandma chuckled. We asked them not to come back. That evening, I blocked their numbers and all their social media accounts. Ashley's too. I knew what would come next, sudden declarations of love and regret, offers to start fresh as a family. But I didn't need their kind of family anymore. Now, sitting in my constitutional law class, taking notes and actually enjoying the complexity of the material, I sometimes think about that little girl who used to pray for her parents' love. I wish I could tell her that she'd find something better, not just love, but respect, support, and the freedom to be herself. My phone buzzes quietly in my pocket, probably my study group confirming our meeting at the library later. Or maybe it's Jake, that cute guy from my psychology class who keeps asking to get coffee, not at my cafe, thankfully. It's such a normal life. No drama, no constant comparisons, no feeling like I'm not enough. Just me, my studies, my friends, and my future stretching out ahead of me, full of possibilities.